How's it going, everyone? My name is Lionel, and welcome to Meeting in the Flesh. This is a horror romance visual novel where you get to date some fairly beautiful individuals, and you'll find out what I mean soon enough. Warning, this game contains text descriptions and non-explicit visual descriptions of blood, gore, torture, Vored, cannibalism, adult fun times, and hand-holding. Oh gosh, this might be too lewd for my channel. By continuing, you are agreeing to do so at your own risk. Yeah, sure, I agree. You have to wake up at the same time every day. I've grown far too accustomed to it. I'm awake even before my alarm beetle goes off. The air outside must still be cold from the rain last night. The room feels a little chilly, and there's a strong compulsion to stay curled up in my blanket. My bed is enticingly warm after all, so I decided to remain still until it's absolutely necessary for me to rise. Keeping my eyes closed, I consider what to wear for today. The weather today is supposed to be cloudy. Wearing an extra cloak might not be a bad idea, just one of the lighter ones. The alarm beetle starts chirping, and I lay my hands on it before its first trill is over, gently silencing it. I crack my eyes open to squint at the light gently flickering into my room. I will get up. I better get up. Right. Let's get going. I crawl out of bed and begin my usual morning routine. It's become such a deeply ingrained habit that I hardly need to think about what I'm doing. I splash my face with water first, then wipe off any pus that's accumulated overnight. Pus! Toweling my face off, I return to open the windows and air out the place. The atmosphere outside is crisp from last night's rain. The ground's still a little moist, and there's a pleasant miasma that stings at the nose. Poking my head out the window, I take a few deep breaths to chase off the last tendrils of sleep before withdrawing back inside and making my bed. I find my way to my table and retrieve my usual breakfast, a block of salt and a cup of water. Some people go without eating in the morning and only drink water. I found it hard to last the morning without some salt. The crystals crunch between my teeth as I look for a cloak of appropriate thickness. The cloak I'm looking for turns out to be abandoned in the corner, and I swallow my mouthful of salt as I pull it on. The salt burns down the full length of my throat, and I wash it down with water. That's done. I smooth my hands down the front of my cloak to brush off any stray salt crystals, and to make sure there aren't any unsightly wrinkles. I want to look presentable. Even if I'm just a delivery agent, I still want to look good for my clients. My entire routine doesn't take more than 15 minutes. I've streamlined it over the years. I glance outside as I close my windows. The streets outside are still mostly quiet, with only a few people bustling about. The owner of the corner store is quietly sweeping the streets, the rhythmic scratch of brush bristles against the damp dirt echoing down the block. A few crows linger on the nearby roof, muttering to themselves. They seem a little more excited than usual. My room falls quiet when I close the window. As I leave, I lock the door and jostle it 1, 2, 3 times to make sure it's secure. Then I head down the street. The crows bellow at me when I walk past them, and I glance up to give them a smile. They remember people's faces, so it's best to stay on their good side if possible. Past them, the sky is deeper green than it usually is. I squint and shield my eyes as I look up at the suns. That's right, I'd forgotten. The eclipse is in 2 days. The suns? How many suns are there out there? The primary sun looms largest overhead, but its smaller brothers don't lag far behind. The three forming a lopsided triangle. The moon lingers lower down, closer to the horizon, like a pale paper cutout laid against the sky. It's normal for them to be scattered like this, but in 2 days, for just a moment, they'll all align. The 3 suns all overlapping at one point in the sky, blocked from my view by one of our 2 moons. Wow, 3 suns and 2 moons. An absolute solar eclipse. Excited about the eclipse coming up? I gave a slight jump when a voice chirps from right behind me. I roll around so quickly, I almost end up entangled in my own cloak. Actually, I wonder what kind of voice would Agri give.
Whoa, didn't mean to scare you there. Sorry about that.
No, it's alright. I was just thinking about things. One of my neighbors, Agri, from just down the back. She looks more jittery than usual, a string of saliva dribbling down from her mandibles as she also casts her gaze up towards the sky.
Oh, it's exciting, isn't it? Just 2 more days and it will be the eclipse. Are you thinking of doing anything special on that day, sweetie?
I smile and shake my head. Nothing in particular. I'm just looking forward to seeing it.
That's also fine. But you should also really think hard, just in case there is something special you want to do on that day.
Well, an absolute solar eclipse only occurs once every century or so. A rare event. I squint up at the sky. Perhaps because of that, people view it as an auspicious phenomenon. It's said that if you make an important life decision or attempt something new on the day of the absolute solar eclipse, the results are more likely to be favorable. I've never believed in such superstitions, but I know most of the city is looking forward to the eclipse. A lot of people propose to loved ones, explore new areas, or change their jobs on Eclipse Day. As a result, I heard it's considered something of a headache for the community organizers who need to deal with the chaos. Still, the excitement building in the air is almost palpable. Regardless of my own beliefs, I don't see any reason to squelch anyone else's excitement. I look back to my neighbor. Do you have any plans for Eclipse Day, Agri?
Oh, I do!
She gives an excited chirp, clasping her hands together.
I'm going to visit my dear friend across town. We had a rather bad fight years ago and haven't spoken since, but we agreed to meet on Eclipse Day to talk things out. I'm sure we'll be able to rekindle our friendship.
Her genuine excitement is heartwarming. I can't help smiling as I give a nod. That sounds wonderful. I hope it goes well.
Thank you, dear. Oh, but I shouldn't keep you for so long. You're on your way to work, aren't you?
I nod again. It's alright. I always head out early, and it was nice hearing about your plans.
Well, good luck on your way to work. And do think about something to do for Eclipse Day. It would be such a shame to let the opportunity pass by you.
I give her a small wave as I turn to leave, as she cheerily returns the gesture. But once I turn the corner, I speed up into a light gallop. Despite what I told her, I hurry a little. I like getting places a little earlier than necessary. Morning, boss. The air in the salt processing plant stings at the nose, burning at the lungs a little with each breath, and I try not to inhale too deeply. Full-time workers here usually wear masks unless they happen to have well-developed nasal filters. Since I'm usually in and out of here quickly, I don't bother with mask.
Where's your mask?
Wait, I can't tell if it's a mask of femme. My boss is pretty strict though. It's alright, boss, I'll be out of here pretty quick.
No, wear your mask. You'll need to wait a few moments.
He thrusts a mask into my hands before I can stop him, then turns away to a nearby table piled high with packages. I give a slightly exasperated sigh. How many times have we had this exact same exchange before? Although it's a pretty good indicator of how much the boss cares for his workers, I guess. I'll put on my mask. I'm not a butthole. Might as well put on the mask. It's a little uncomfortable, especially where the filter brushes against the raw sections of my face, but it does immediately make breathing easier. As I adjust the mask strings, I take a cursory glance around the factory. It's a familiar sight, but its internal workings are always fascinating to watch. A chute at the far end of the room belches out spurts of salt crystals, spilling them into a huge vat. The steady hum of grinding and crunching sometimes seeps through the chute, like the sounds of many small bones being chewed up. On the other side of that chute is a machine that processes raw salt, breaking up any larger rocks into these smaller crystals. The ground up salt needs to be processed further though. The grinding process doesn't get rid of any insects, rocks, or hair clumps that might be present in the raw rock salts. Workers carry huge buckets of this unprocessed salt to the smaller vats that dot the cavernous room. These vats are constantly stirred with long poles, pressing the rock crystals through filters that will catch any unwanted material. The filters quickly clog up with hairs and insect wings and need to be swapped out frequently. One vat has a worker carefully adding an enormous bucket of flavoring to it. The scent of honey comes wafting through the air and I inhale deeply. The sweet slick of honey contrasts beautifully to the familiar crisp sting of salt. Honey salt must be delicious. Maybe I'll get to splurge on it someday. In order to do that, I need to work. So, what's my quota today look like? My voice comes out a little muffled past the mask. A little more than usual. I step to the table to help the boss load packages into the cloth bundle. Each package is a block of salt wrapped tight in a piece of fabric. The fabric protects the salt from any moisture while it's in transit, and also catches any pieces that might crumble off. Most of the bundles are wrapped in cheap, tan fabric. Those are packages of normal salt, with those few packages wrapped in red or yellow cloth, and a few newer wrapped in a white cloth. The white ones are mercury, right? The boss grunts in affirmative. Mercury salt is such a rare treat that I don't deliver it often. That looks like more honey and punishment salt than usual, too. People are getting excited about the eclipse, treating themselves. Punishment salt? Right, of course. What do you mean by punishment salt? The boss counts the packages one last time before tying the bundle shut and handing it over to me. There's a rustle of fabric and crackle of a few salt crystals bumping into each other with each movement. The package weighing heavily in my hands. I tie the fabric tight over one shoulder so the bundle doesn't come loose or jostle around too much while I'm running. And here's the route. He hands me a scrap of paper with just a few notes jotted on it. I've long since memorized my route, and the paper only notes any exceptions. Who doesn't need salt today, who's getting special salt instead of the usual, who's getting more packages than usual. Usually, I don't even need this cheat sheet, but there are a lot of exceptions today. It really does seem like everyone's changing things up in preparation for the eclipse. All the more reason to avoid making mistakes. I'd hate to deliver people the wrong salt and put a damper on the mood. Got it. Pocketing the note, I give the bundle one last tug with my hands to make sure it's in place before turning towards the door. Right before I push the door open, I remember to take my mask and hand it right back to the boss. He gives a snort and he takes it back, waving a hand to shoo me out, and on my way, the heavy door lumbers shut. I hear him call out gruffly, "Take care." Man, I like my boss. Just a tiny sliver of the plant's exterior is visible past the closing door, and I give him a wave of the hand before turning back towards the street. Alright, time to begin my route. I've been delivering salt for several years now, so I was uncertain when an acquaintance first suggested the job to me. I've really warmed up to it since then. The workload is consistent and predictable. My boss is nice, if a little gruff, and the neighborhoods I deliver to are full of friendly people. Hey, starting on your route for today? Yeah, have a good morning. You too. Man, there are so many monsters in here and I love it. Oh my god, I'm a furry. Oh god, my hind claw digs a little into the ground, kicking up small clumps of dirt with each step. I quickly fall into a comfortable galloping gait as I take a hard left through the salt processing plant and starts heading down the streets. Huge slabs of building looms overhead on both sides. This block doesn't have many residents as it's mostly factories. I pass by those quickly. No deliveries to make just yet. But I do have one delivery to make a corner up ahead. The building at the very end of the block is smaller. Its outer wall off-white instead of murky beige. It's not very tall either, but it does have an awesome structure sprouting from its top. A giant tower clawing up towards the sky, made of bones and coated in smooth flesh. An enormous pair of antennae protruding from the tip of the tower. Their chitinous shells gleaming faintly in the sunlight. They whip back and forth at random intervals as if raking through the air. The numerous eyeballs at the antenna's base also blink frequently. The irises swiveling around to survey the surroundings. One of them swirls around to look over at me when I approach, and I give it a small wave. Hello there! My name's Lionel! How are you doing? The front entrances to the building has a small sign carved into it. The sign reads, Community Overlook Center. I open the door and enter. Ooh, wow, this looks snazzy. The office's interior is much cozier. The air clean and warm. There are a few desks littered with papers. Workers busily reading over their contents and filling out their forms. This place always looks busy when I come. Never hectic though. Despite the steady bustle of productivity, nothing ever seems out of control. Not that I know these workers very well. I do wave to a vaguely familiar face, but I head straight to the far corner where the tower control pod sits. The pod's nerves crawls up the wall like a giant spider web, thick cables of flesh burrowing into the smooth rock surface. The pod itself is a giant oblong shape, coated in flesh and pulsing gently. The eyeballs embedded on its surface flicker about more languidly, a few of them fixing on me as I approach, so they close wetly after a few moments of staring. You probably don't want to get squished when the pod opens. There's the loud squelch of fluid slick flesh when the pod splits open at the center, its two halves neatly sliding apart like a beetle's carapace. A wall of hot, damp air bursts outward as the pod opens. The interior of the pod is oozing fluid, drips of it spilling out to dot the floor. A thick coating of it obscures the shape of the person sitting inside until he sits up and stretches his arms. Fluid comes sloughing up in sheets, spilling back into the pod's interiors as he rises to his feet. There's two wet plops of suction as he detaches the pod's nerve cables attached to his temples. Hi, Yistol. Yistol towers over me as he straightens up to his full height, the bones of his feet clicking gracefully on the floor when he steps out of the pod. Oh, hello there, sexy! Morning, Vil. He always talks gently, his voice low. It's a little hard to make out what he's saying if the office is ever really busy, but it does make him sound very reassuring, especially when he smiles a little. Diligent as ever, I see. Yistol leads the way to a table nearby. It's far enough from the pod that there isn't any danger of fluid splashback, which is good. Salt doesn't hold up well to anything wet, and I have a lot of salt to drop off here. My bundle's heavy from the day's worth of salt, and I'm looking forward to lightening it significantly. I start undoing the fabric knot to put the bundle down on the table. How are things looking up today? He gives a small sigh at that, just a warm puff of air that escapes past chitinous lips. I haven't spotted any real troublemakers, but there's certainly a buzz in the air. There seems to be a little crowd congregating just north of here, so I might have to send someone to check it out later. Hopefully it's just a friendly gathering, so I can leave it be. I'd hate to have to get anyone in trouble just before the eclipse. Oh gosh, not sympathetically. I don't fully understand Yistol's job, so all I can do is offer sympathy. It does sound like the situation could go either way. Hopefully it won't cause too much trouble for you, no matter the outcome. Thanks, Vil. It should be alright. I'll just keep a few eyes on them for a while. Yistol's job seems busy at the best of times, and I can imagine it only grows more difficult during times of excitement. Like around the eclipse, there aren't many people who can handle the pressure of being the town's Overlook, especially since the Overlook pod is apparently a strain to operate. But Yistol's been loved by everyone since he took the job. Highly attentive and quick to respond. He's been key in maintaining the town's peace because he's able to spot troublemakers so quickly and send officials to stop them before too much damage is done. It's done a lot to discourage crime. That on top of being an all-around nice guy, like seriously, like Yistol is, oh my god, he is such a scrunkly man and I love him. Oh gosh. Oh. The fabric finally comes undone and I settle it on the table before digging through my pockets for a note. Alright, it says here that you need 24 packets of salt today, correct? Correct. 24 then. Yistol doesn't eat the 24 packets of salt for himself, of course. As the community overlook, he's also in charge of keeping an eye out for people who are ill or injured or have fallen into hard times. Anyone who might have difficulty procuring their own salt. These 24 packets will be distributed to such people. That's a little more than usual, right? Is the eclipse causing any trouble? I lay out the salt packets in stacks of 4. In a sense. Yistol gives a slightly sheepish laugh. It's not trouble, but I want to ensure that people aren't struggling for salt during a time as joyous as the eclipse. I'll be giving out a little extra to people who are having a hard time. My heart warms with admiration. Oh, Yistol, you don't have to go after my heart like this. That's really nice of you. I'm sure they'll really appreciate it. 6 stacks of 4, 24 packets of salt lay neatly on the table, and I make sure Yistol's given it an approving nod before I tie my bundle back over my shoulder. Speaking of the eclipse, do you have any plans? Everyone's so excited about the eclipse. I shake my head. Not really. Might go out to watch it, I guess. Yistol laughs gently. He has a raspy laugh, in contrast to his lilting voice. You sound awfully unimpressed by the eclipse. I guess I'm pretty satisfied with where I am right now. I know the eclipse is supposed to be good luck if you are making any big decisions, but I don't have any decisions to make. I shift the bundle on my shoulder, and it comes out like a shrug. Maybe if I try to take a different route on my delivery that day, I'll find a shortcut. That would be nice. It will make your life a little easier, I suppose. Do you have any plans? There's a pause. He still looks thoughtful, a finger tapping at his chin before his lips curve into a smile. I might. Yeah, I'm still deciding. But you know, Vil. Yistol reaches out to touch my shoulder. Despite the hard bones of his fingers, the gesture is soft and comforting, squeezing just briefly before giving a tender pat and then pulling away. The eclipse really is a special time, not because of the eclipse itself, but because everyone is so excited and happy. I don't think it will be a bad idea to take advantage of that unique energy in the air. I give a small smile. Alright, I'll give it some thought. Yistol sees me off. Is it alright for you to leave your pod for so long? It's alright for a few minutes. Taking short breaks help keep my mind clear. Don't work yourself too hard. Even if everyone's depending on you, you shouldn't run yourself ragged. Thanks, you too. I grin. Don't worry, you helped me a lot by taking so much salt off my hands. My route's always easier after I visit you. Yistol rasps out a laugh. Well, I'm glad I could be of help to you. So I should be the one to thank you for all the hard work you do all the time. Alright, I'll see you later, Yistol. Take care, Vil. Yistol waves as I start off at a light jog. I wave back. The Overlook tower is docile without him in the cockpit. The towering antenna and mounds of flesh just barely quivering. It's strange to see it so calm, which says a lot about how much I've grown used to Yistol's constant presence, keeping an eye on the city. He's a good guy. I hope he gets a day off sometime. He could probably use it. It only takes a few paces to hit my stride, my posture lowering as I transition into my usual gallop. With that big delivery out of the way, the rest of the route is smaller deliveries. No problem. Here you go. Thanks. Quick as ever, aren't you? Just try and be on time. Have a nice day. You too, Vil. Most deliveries go quickly. Just 1 or 2 salt packets to drop off along with a brief greeting. For people who usually aren't at home, I have to drop their salt into the usual delivery box just in front of their door. It's nicer doing personal deliveries since I like saying a brief hello to my clients, but it can't be helped. Everyone has things to do. Thanks, Vil. Honey salt, huh? Planning on doing something special for the eclipse? Yep, think you're throwing a bit of a party. Glad I could get your salt safety then. I appreciate it. You be careful on your route now, you hear? You do. Everyone seems happy. It's nice. It's a nice day. I love how wholesome this game is. Like, I have to take a moment to just like appreciate that. My next delivery is a few blocks away, but I can cut through the park. The ground's a little wetter here. The dirt solid underneath my feet instead of kicking up into little puffs. My claws dig small grooves into each step, no doubt leaving lines of tick marks to signal where I've been. They'll probably be trampled flat during the day, only to repeat the next day. The paths in the park are flanked by trees, their gnarled branches reaching haphazardly up and outwards, as if they're also looking forward to the eclipse. Small insects lay nestled in the bark, their wings shimmering like water droplets each time they flit around. A few of them chitter at each other, set to the backdrop of crows shouting. Somewhere further away, there's the quiet drone of some sort of factory belching long streamers of smoke. It's nice here. The atmosphere is great. I really like getting to cut through the park. I'm so distracted that I don't hear the sounds of footsteps approaching. Rapidly. Vil! Oh my god, it's a fluffy wolf boy! Heck yeah! A boisterous pillar of fur and energy comes bursting out of the foliage, directly to my right. I jump almost 2 feet in the air. Hey, Vil! Bratton stinks of sweat and dirt. His fur is matted dark in spots, plastered out in strange directions from dried fluids. And there's a glob of something fleshy stuck to his jaw. Hey, Bratton. Been out all night? Yeah. Just as I suspected. We were exploring out westward since we smelled a lot of salt. Haven't found anything yet, though. I'm sure you'll find it soon. You guys are really good at your jobs. Bratton beams at me, tail wagging side to side and knocking around some innocent saplings branches. Bratton works as a salt scout. Salt scouts search the flesh fields outside the city in search of raw salt pools. These pools are where we harvest the raw salt for processing at the plant, then distributing out to people. An important job, in other words. Salt scouts depend on their sense of smell or sensitivity to changes in the air to seek out the signature sting of salt. So apparently, many of them don't mind working during the night where visibility is poor. It's not unusual to see a salt scout heading home in the morning, dirty from a long night of exploring. Anyway, even after a night of what must have been exhausting work, Bratton talks at a boisterous growl. I thought I smelled you, with salt, so I figure I'd catch you now. If I pick up the salt from you here, it'll make your route a little easier, right? Man, I freaking love how much of a good boy Bratton is. Isn't that right, Bloha? A small tug in my face. Bratton looks terribly proud of his innovative thought. Well, I'll be nice and say it helps out a lot. There's no way I can squelch this sort of enthusiasm. Thanks, it really helps a lot. Not really, my route takes me past Bratton's house anyway, but I won't tell him that. Bratton gives me a wide smile, showing off every single one of his sharp teeth. No problem. It's awfully endearing. Well, let me check what your delivery for today is. Just usual for me. He pipes up before I can double check my notes, so I nod as I shift the bundle on my shoulder to pull out his usual delivery, 2 packs of regular salt. Bratton tends to eat more than the average. Understandable with how much time he spends moving around. By the way, he sounds excited. I bet he's gonna talk about the eclipse. Do you have any plans for the eclipse? The swinging of its tail has grown ferocious, batting a branch aside with enough gusto to snap it in half. Not really. Everyone seems so excited for the eclipse, which I suppose is a normal reaction. It's probably weirder that I'm more laid back about it, but that's just my nature. Besides, it makes me happy enough just seeing other people being so excited. Their feelings are infectious. Aw, really? Come on, you should live a little. Brandon's enormous paw claps on my back, making me stumble forward a step. One or two salt packets spill from my bundle, but he catches them before they hit the ground. Whoops, sorry about that. It's alright. I put those packets away and managed to extract 2 packets of regular salt in the process. Here you go, the usual for you. Thanks, Bill. For a moment, Brandon sounds like he's about to add something, but stops himself. I don't prod. Just readjusting my bundle. Sure enough, he shifts his weight from one foot to the other for a few moments, in a nervous fidget before speaking up again. Hey, you should really consider doing something for the eclipse. Well, it's not like I'm against doing anything, but I guess I just don't have any plans. So you'd be up for doing something adventurous? Brandon blurts out that loud enough to startle off a crow overhead, and I can't help being curious. Maybe? Cool! There's a pause before he hurries to add. Not that I have anything planned or anything, I was just asking. But you never know what might come up. That's what I'm saying. I have to fight back a grin. Brandon isn't good at being subtle. I guess you're right. Knowing Brandon, maybe he'll teach me about a hidden location to view the eclipse from. He knows the area like the back of his hand, thanks to his job. This shortcut through the park is something he taught me about. So I'd actually be pretty happy if he taught me about a strange new location to visit during the eclipse. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your job. Brandon's stifling a yawn as he says that. Even his endless energy must be running low after working all night. Sure, you should go get some rest. Will do. There's no warning before Brandon leans in to lick my face. Oh man, you don't have to, you don't have to make me blush like this. Oh gosh, I'm bright red right now. There's no warning before Brandon leans in to lick my face, his tongue dragging all the way up from my chin to my brow before leaving a sticky trail of drool in its wake. A very moist sign of affection. It's so moist. Do good on your job, and I'll see you tomorrow. And with that, Brandon's on his way. He leaves me moist and he leaves. Like, sheesh! I wave as Brandon makes his loud exit, crashing his way through some defenseless bushes and leaving a trail of trampled ground in his wake. He waves back as he turns the corner, around a prickly bush up ahead, then vanishes from view. It's only then I raise a hand to my face, considering wiping away the damn tracks lingering on my face. I ended up just leaving it be. It's not a big deal after all, and my face gets chapped from running against the wind all day. The sheen of spit soothes the raw skin a little bit. So after one last check on my bundle to make sure it's secure, I turn my attention back to the path through the park. Time to get back to work. Here you go. Thanks, Vil. You're always around time. I really appreciate it. It's nice to get my salt directly from you instead of my box, you know? I understand. I'm glad I could get it to you too. You're such a good kid. You take care, alright? Will do, sir. The route grows easier towards the end of the day as my bundle grows even lighter. I have to stop to tie it tighter over my shoulder, making sure the excess fabric doesn't billow and flap around too much as I run. The deliveries go smoothly. Everyone seems to be in a pretty good mood, and one client gives me a cup of water to keep me going. Though I don't need the water, it's still a nice energy boost, and I thank her for it before continuing on my way. One block has 5 houses in a row that needs deliveries. One house is occupied, and I get to hand the salt to my client directly. But the other 4 are empty, so I leave the salt in their boxes. Maybe they're off at work, or maybe they're making preparations for the eclipse. Hopefully I can say hi to them tomorrow at least. That block done, I trot to the end of the street to the corner. But the sound of screaming catches my attention. Looking up, I catch sight of a small crowd a few blocks down. It takes me a moment of squinting to realize what it is. A punishment salt bath. Is that a bad thing? Oh no! Oh no, it is a bad thing! There's a giant metal tub placed on the ground, flanked on either side by an Overlook officer. And inside the tub, salt and a person, a criminal. Each Overlook officer is holding a capture pole, the wires at the end strung taut around the criminal's limbs, keeping them firmly in the salt bath. Even from this distance, I can make out patches of raw, wet flesh, areas where the criminal's skin has been flayed to expose them to the salt. No doubt the salt in the bath is starting to stain red and clump together from the blood and fluids. My mouth waters a little just from the thought. Waters a little? Like, ooh! These punishment salt baths serves a dual function. On one hand, this is a pretty good punishment. Though larger crimes earn harsher punishments, first-time offenders are usually only given a salt bath. The pain of having raw flesh exposed to salt is usually enough of a deterrent to keep people from repeating the mistakes in the future. On the other hand, the salt used in these punishments is a bit of a delicacy, so not as prized as honey or mercury salt. Punishment salt has a savory tang to it that almost everyone enjoys. Just enough blood gets mixed into the salt to give it a unique flavor and take off some of the harsh edge to the original salt taste. I'll probably be seeing a bunch of punishment salt to be served tomorrow. Maybe I'll claim a package or two for myself. Everyone's talking about the eclipse after all. Maybe I can treat myself. Whoever's immersed in salt gives a gurgling scream. Sunlight glints bright off the salt tub. I mean, as much as I'd like to stay to watch a little longer, I should get back to work. I mean, I need to get to my next love interest. As interesting as this is, I think it will be best to get back to work. I turn my attention back to the street ahead. The officers are grunting something at the criminal, but I ignore it. Even if the smell of blood and salt in the air is tantalizing, I take 1, 2, 3 quick steps and launch into a steady trot. I'm still on the job, so I shouldn't lose my focus. Alright. I managed to drag my thoughts away from the salt bath by the time I reach the end of the block. I'm at the tail end of my route, and with almost nothing else in my bundle, each step feels light. I drop 2 salt packages into the delivery box before rounding the corner. Immediately, there's a unique sweetness in the air. Without thinking, I raise my head to inhale deeply. Even if I'm deeply familiar with the smell, it's still enticing. One can't help but breathe in deeper inhales around this area, and there's always a few people loitering around. Up ahead is the bee store. The bee store? Oh, bees! Oh, I love it! The small bone chimes above the door rattles as I enter. The cage before me buzzes in response. The air inside the store is already dizzyingly sweet, but the heady scent intensifies for a moment, and I utterly lose my train of thought. Standing before the entrance, I just focus on taking in 1, 2, 3 deep breaths, each lungful making me feel more languid. You're here, huh? Nya! Oh, my sweet baby Nya! Oh man, you were the one I was looking forward to. It's a gruff voice sounding from the further back inside the store that snaps me back to attention. Hey Nya, I have your salt. Nya stands between 2 tall rows of cages, making notes on the scraps of paper, probably taking notes on the condition of the bees. As I make my way down the aisle, the cages around me buzz happily. Oh, it's a bee! It's a bee! Each cage contains a large fat bee. Some are shy and turn away as I walk by, but others are more presentable and bumble up to the front of the cage to poke their antennas through the bars and wiggle them at me. One cage contains a particular fluffy bee that waggles its abdomen at me as I approach. I've helped bathe this one before, so it's familiar with me. When I pause to poke my fingers through the bars of the cage, it toddles closer and ducks its head so I can rub the area behind its head, right where the bristly fur starts to sprout. I pat it a few times, rubbing my fingers in short strokes, and it hums happily in response, flicking its wings. Honey dribbles from its mandibles, leaving a damp yellow spot on the paddling in the cage. Hey there, you're not supposed to be wasting honey like that. Don't blame my bee for that. You're the one making her drool. Nya must have finished taking his notes because he has made his way down the aisle towards me. The bulk of his body towers over me, leaning over to peer into the cage where the bee is rubbing at its mandibles with its frontmost legs. My girls have had to work hard these days. You shouldn't agitate them. Yo, right, sorry. You're fine, just don't excite them too much. Got it. The bee is continuing to wash its face off, antenna flicking periodically. Because of the eclipse, huh? Yeah, not surprising. Bees are highly prized for their honey. Everyone loves honey salt after all. Nyar's stall sells both bees and honey. Bees are so expensive, both to buy and care for, so not many people can afford to buy one. But saving up to buy some honey for special occasions is much more doable. Maybe I can do that, actually, since I don't have any other plans for the eclipse. Hey Nya? Huh? Do you have any plans for the eclipse? No. Also not surprising, Nya is the type who largely keeps to himself. But I suppose the eclipse should be nice to watch. Right? I'm thinking the same thing. Maybe just take a relaxing break, watching it happen. Sounds ideal. Think I should buy some honey for the occasion? I do have a few bottles left for today. Let's see. I'll tell him that I'm considering buying some. Nya will probably be happiest if I honestly say what's on my mind. You know, I don't do it often, but I was considering picking up a bottle since it's a special occasion and all. You want one now? Not now. I don't carry my wallet with me on my route. Maybe tomorrow? I might sell out tomorrow. But I'll set a bottle aside for you tomorrow if you want. That'd be great. Thank you. Nya only grunts in response, but some of his lips quirk a little. I think he's pleased. The bone chime on the door rattles as another customer enters, and I give Nya a quick wave. I better go actually, but I'll see you tomorrow? Nya grunts again, already turning towards his new customer. I give the bees a little wave too. They buzz back at me, the sweet scent of honey in the air intensifying at that moment. I almost stumble as I turn towards the door, inhaling deeply one last time before stepping outside. My head clears immediately. The air of outside is still sweet, but it's nothing compared to the intensity inside the store. Outside, a few people peer into the window, looking at the bees on display there. It smells so good, doesn't it? Wanna go inside? Nah, I don't want to run into the owner guy. Why? What's wrong with the owner? I was about to resume my route, but I paused, pretending to adjust the fabric tied over my shoulder. Not that that's even necessary. The strangers don't pay me any attention. I heard he doesn't eat much salt. So what? But he eats something else other than salt. What? I roll my eyes a little. Nobody knows, but it's not normal to eat so little salt, you know? And my friend said he once went to the store and saw him eating one of the bees. Gross! I've heard all that I care to hear, so I finished adjusting my pack and set off at a steady gallop. There are a few weird rumors about Nya floating around, and so I once interrupted some gossipy customers. Nya told me not to bother in the future, that he doesn't care what other people say. Still, it irks me that people bother making up these silly rumors about people just because they're different. And Nya is a good guy. He's a goodness boy. When I get home, I look through my savings and make sure I have enough to buy a bottle of honey. He seems pleased by my promise to buy a bottle after all. Thanks, Vil. I was worried that you might be late, since things seem so hectic today. I'm glad I didn't keep you waiting. You always work so hard, so I know I can count on you. But don't work yourself too hard, you hear? Make sure you give yourself some time off on the eclipse. I'll do that. Don't worry. I waved to the last of my customers for the day, sighing quietly as I turn the corner back down the main street. The empty pack over my shoulder gets folded up into a little cloth bundle I can fit into my pocket. I'll drop this off tomorrow morning while picking up my salt, so my work for today is done. It's not too late when I get back home, but I feel tired nonetheless. Maybe it's the atmosphere. Though the walk back home had been uneventful, that spark in the air had still been present. It had been like trying to wade through a shallow pool of water. The energy slowing off one's skin in thin sheets with each little conversation with the passerby. Everyone seems genuinely excited and I was happy for them, truly. But now that I'm in my room, alone, I can't help wondering if it's really fine for me to have no plans at all for the eclipse. I open the window and lean out as I chew on a block of salt, feeling each bite sting at my gums. Outside, the two moons glow past a gossamer curtain of clouds. They infuse the night sky with a gentle light, warding off the complete darkness, and I bask in the cold light as I reflect on the day's events. All of my customers had such different expectations for the eclipse. It sounded like Yistol had something in mind. Same for Bratton. I guess Nya doesn't actually have any plans, but he has to work hard leading up to the eclipse. I finish my salt, dusting my hands off outside, and close the window as I retreat back into my room. Well, I guess it's kinda late to be making any big decisions anyway. And the belief that the eclipse will herald anything good is just superstition. It's a little early to be sleeping, but the day's been weirdly exhausting and I can feel sleep rolling in like a blanket of fog, steadily clouding through my head. As I sink back into my bed and stare up at the ceiling, I idly consider tomorrow's route. I guess I'm gonna be pretty busy tomorrow too. So I start going over tomorrow's route in my head. I can feel my thoughts rapidly clouding over. I'll just deal with things as they happen, I guess. My eyes snap open automatically in the morning. Slept well. I usually sleep well. Running all day tends to do that to you. I resist the urge to roll over and bury my face back in my pillow, settling for closing my eyes until the alarm beetle starts chirping. The moment that familiar noise starts buzzing from the bedside table, I'm up on my feet, stroking its wings to quiet it. As I walk around my room, crunching on my salt, I glance outside where the skies are warm with sunlight. It's still early, but I can already hear the sounds of faint chatter floating through the window. People aren't usually up and about this time of day. I peek out the curtains as I lick the last crumbs of salt off my lips. I can spot a few people standing around, sweeping the streets or talking amongst themselves. Probably discussing the eclipse. I hurry a little as I wash my hands off and prepare to leave the house. I didn't set my alarm for today any earlier than usual, but maybe I should have. I get the feeling today's gonna be a busy day. Morning, dear. Morning, Aguri. In a hurry, are we? Just a little. Seems like today's gonna be hectic, so I should probably get to the plan fast. Alright, I won't keep you then. Have a safe day. Thanks, you too. I feel a little bad about rushing past her like this, but I can already tell that today's gonna be a bit different. There's a strange electricity in the air, the feeling that something's going to happen soon. A few blocks down the street, I can see a group of people huddled together, heads gathered, They look like they were discussing something very important, the hands and claws quivering with excitement. I take a right turn into the alleyway before I reach them, so I won't disrupt them by running through the group. No doubt this is an important moment for them, but I do pick up the pace into a light trot. My boss might be bad if I'm late today of all days. You're here! Sorry if I'm late, boss. You're not, lucky for you. He sounds tense, perhaps understandably. The plan feels busier than usual, with more people bustling around. He hasn't even told me to wear my mask yet, so I do it on my own. I don't want to stress him out for any reason. How's today's route looking? You better go quick today. It's looking complicated. I follow him over to the table where today's delivery bundles are being assembled. They don't look as put together as they usually are by this time. We're a bit behind schedule. We got far more specialty salt requests than we planned, so we had to throw together a batch at the last moment. Didn't expect people to splurge as much for the eclipse. He grumbles, but his hands don't stop moving. I stand alongside him, peeking over his shoulder at the delivery list so I can help assemble salt packets and divide them into bundles accordingly. It's true that the list looks far more complicated than it usually does, longer too. Usually the daily deliveries are almost all plain salt, with just a handful of special deliveries. Today, the list is peppered with requests for honey, mercury, and punishment salt. So much for my plans requesting some punishment salt of my own. I better focus on getting the job done today first. Wrapping the salt isn't my specialty, so my movements are a little slow. But even that's better than nothing, judging by the way my boss gives an approving nod. His hands dart about the table, grabbing up salt blocks from their crates, and wrapping them tight in pre-cut fabric in one swift movement, and sliding them across the table. I know he's been the head of the salt plant for 50 years now. This must be second nature to him. You're a good kid, you know that. Huh? You're a good kid. I'm not a kid. He grunted that. I must look like a kid to him with his age and experience. But thanks. I just want to help with what I can. He grunts again. It's not like him to say something so mushy. He must really be stressed. You're a hard worker and you care about other people. That's important. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You're a good kid. I can't help back a grin at that. Thanks, boss. My boss wraps salt at a ferocious rate, swiftly adding to the pile, but regardless of our addition to the worker line, we're a bit behind schedule. By the time boss hands over my bundle and the route notes for the day, it's peppered with ticks and checks to mark which houses need specialty salt. Today's route is gonna be tricky. Don't give anyone the wrong order now, you hear? I'll be careful, boss. I tie the bundle over my shoulder and turn towards the door. I'll get going. Good luck here. Be careful. I give him a little wave as I turn towards the door. It's necessary to start my route at a brisk walk to keep my legs from cramping up later on, but I ramp up pretty quickly into a trot, then a light gallop. I do need to pace myself to avoid tiring myself out early on, though. Today is going to be a bit exhausting for sure, but the thought of getting everyone the special salt to celebrate the upcoming eclipse keeps me going. I hope a lot of people are going to be happy. Here you go. Thanks, man. I think most people can immediately tell I'm in a bit of a rush. I feel bad not stopping to chat with people, but it can't be helped today. Even with the fast clip I'm moving, I'm already a little behind schedule. My feet slip a bit as I round a corner too quickly. I have to dig my claws into the ground to keep them from falling over. At least I'll be able to unload a good deal of my cargo at Yistol's office. The office is a bit busier than usual when I open the door to step in. The workers murmur quietly among themselves, head together, hands shuffling about the papers. It's usually almost silent in here to help Yistol concentrate, so any noise feels out of the norm. I did notice the eyeballs on the spire outside swiveling around frantically as I walked up. There must be a lot going on. Sure enough, when Yistol disengages from the pod and strides over to look at me, he looks tired. Despite the slicks of fluid, his exoskeleton is slightly lacking in its usual luster and he blinks more often, running his fingers through his hair. Morning, Yil. Morning, Yistol. You holding up right? Yistol smiles. I'll be alright, thanks. It's just been a bit busy today. There were a few incidents last night, so I had to stay to take care of them. He talks as he leads the way towards the side table so I can set out today's salt delivery. I have to admit, even if I knew the eclipse would be hectic, I didn't expect things to ramp up so quickly. His narrow chest rises, then slowly sinks back in as he looks towards the open pod. Without a controller, the pod lies dormant, its eyes closed and folds of flesh quivering to a stop. It seems everyone's excited to make big, life-changing decisions during the eclipse, but with that excitement comes a lack of judgment in some people, so there's been more trouble in general. Yistol sighs again. I can see a sliver of sharp teeth past the thin gap between his lips. The previous Overlook did warn me that the eclipse would be hard, but I might have underestimated it a little. I give a sympathetic nod as I quickly undo the fabric of my delivery pack so I can line up the salt packets. Today's list of delivery notes is longer than usual, the paper unfolding into a long sheet when I pull it out of my pocket, and I look over it carefully as I begin counting out salt packets. This is your first eclipse, right? That's right. At least I had plenty of time to get used to the job before it came around. I heard my predecessor was barely a decade into his job before his first eclipse. Yistol laughs. It's soft, chittering like a cluster of birds, and I can't help but smile and reflect. I can only imagine how hard that must have been. Oh yes, he never stopped telling me about how difficult that was. Yistol's fingers are long and delicate as he double-checks my counting, making sure there's the right number of each type of salt. 10 for normal, white for mercury, yellow for honey, red for punishment. The office doesn't usually get such a wide variety of salts, but the eclipse merits some splurging, I guess. I thought everyone deserves a little something nice for the eclipse. Huh? It's like he can read my mind. He runs his fingers over the stacks of salt packets. It's an awfully special time, so I put in a little effort and found the funds for some specialty salt. They'll go to people who've been having hard times. It's a sort of good luck charm. Aww, I'm sure it'll be really appreciated. I look up from my notes to give him a smile. He blinks before smiling back. His teeth are very white. I'm glad you think so too. I'd like to help as many people as possible, to make this eclipse safe and enjoyable for as many people as possible, even if I have to spend every waking moment in the Overlook pod. You already do so much for the community though. He still looks at me when I speak up, and I smile at him. I'm not very good at being reassuring, but yeah, I do my best. I've heard people talk about how things have been really peaceful since you became the Overlook. So don't worry too much, as long as you do your best. I'm sure that's plenty. Yistol's hair rustles as he cants his head. He seems to be considering what I said. I'm rooting for you, alright? So let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Though he remains silent, Yistol blinks, like he's just realizing something. I should head off then. Wouldn't want to eat up too much of your time either. I've double checked to make sure I've set up all of the salt Yistol requested, so I pick up my pack to tie it back over my shoulder. But as I'm tying the knot, Yistol suddenly draws a little closer, just one pace away from me. He's tall enough that I have to raise my head a little to look into his eyes. He's looking down at me with clear focus. Phil? Yeah? I know you're busy with your route, but if it's possible, could you spare a few more minutes to speak with me? There's an unusual gravity to his voice. Yistol is usually light and airy. Everything about him is unobtrusive and soft, but right now, there's a clear point to his words, and his back's held straighter. Even if his gaze is gentle and his face is relaxed, I can tell from the tension of his shoulders and the way he holds himself that he's serious. I can't help casting a brief glance towards the door though. My schedule's still pretty busy today and I can't spare that much extra time, especially since I should try to stay a little ahead of schedule, in case I hit any roadblocks or cause for delay later down the line. But still, I get the sense that this might be something very important for Yistol. Even if I stay to speak with him, I should be able to manage all my other deliveries as long as I move quickly and don't waste any more time. What should I do? Look, I'm gonna stay back and talk to all of them if it's possible. I'm gonna stay and talk to Yistol. I think it would be best to listen to what Yistol has to say. Ultimately, I can't bring myself to just leave, not when Yistol is making such a personal request of me. He's usually so composed and calm that it feels easy to forget what's underneath it all. He's another individual with his own worries and struggles. If he's asking me to stay, there must be a good reason for it, and it would bother me for a long time if I abandoned him like this. And I do have confidence in my running after all. I'm sure I should be able to finish my deliveries on time, even if I stay for a little while. Alright. I gave Yistol a smile as I undo the ties to my pack, lowering it once more. I think I should be alright to stay for a bit. Yistol blinks hesitantly for a moment before speaking up again. He sounds slightly guilty. You sure, Phil? I know this might sound ridiculous since I'm the one who asked you to stay, but I still wouldn't want to cause you too much trouble if your schedule today is tight. Witnessing the sort of uncertainty in someone usually so unflappable is an odd feeling. I nod, considering what to say. I won't be late. Don't worry, I'm sure I can still maintain my schedule. Besides, I think it might not be a bad idea to rest up a little bit before resuming my route. I tend to take more breaks earlier on in the day when the pack is heavier. I see. It's only after he mutters that confirmation that Yistol gives a small sigh, his shoulders sloping downwards as he releases some of that tension in his body. The stiff strands of his hair rustle against each other as he dips his head slightly, seeming to nod to himself before he looks at me once more. There's a gleam of his teeth as he grins at me. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. His voice is so warm, warmer than usual. I feel a spot of heat bloom in my chest, spreading to the base of my throat, and I have to swallow it back. I have to admit, the past few days have been incredibly hectic, and they've been taking their toll on me. But it's hard to justify taking a break by myself when there's so much to keep an eye on. There's a pause before he seems to realize what I said and laughs, embarrassed. His long, bony fingers draw graceful arcs as he waves a hand. Not that I'm just using you as an excuse to rest, of course. I do have something I want to speak to you about. Let's change location, shall we? I wouldn't want to disturb the others while they're still working. The other workers have been diligently toiling away at their tasks, shuffling papers and jotting down notes. Some speak quietly into communication bladders, the bladder tubes pulsing as they carry important messages off to their recipients. One worker looks up and gives a curt nod upon meeting Yistol's eyes, then promptly returns to rifling through tall piles of paper. Let's go up to the roof, shall we? Sure. As we pass by the other workers at their desks, Yistol gently touches one on the shoulder and leans in close, presumably to tell him where they will be. The workers nod in understanding before promptly returning to their task. Yistol ends up leading us out the door and to the back of the office. It opens up to an external stairway that crawls upwards, tracing along the contours of the building. Even this far down, veins and nerves from the Overlook spire curls around the stairwell's guardrails, gently twitching whenever the winds pick up. The spire itself is calm, however, the mirrored eyes half closing and shifting their gaze languidly. The Overlook tower seems to be operating automatically for the moment. It's half awake right now. Yistol must have noticed me looking up curiously. It's not as alert as when I'm in the pod, of course, but even I need to take breaks now and then, and we can't just leave the streets completely unwatched, so the towers evolved to have a half-awake state. Only half the eyes are active, and it can't differentiate between good and bad activity without me. It just automatically alerts us when it spots an unusual amount of movement anywhere. But still, it's better than nothing, and I'm grateful I can take quick breaks without feeling like I've left my post completely unattended. We've been steadily heading upstairs. Each time Yistol takes a step, the pointed tips of his legs hit the stair with a metallic ping. His movements are graceful and calm. They always are. Everything about Yistol always seems so graceful and calm. Oh gosh. And I really admire him for it, heck yeah. And it can't be easy always being so calm, so I really admire him for it. You're such a hard worker. It slips out before I catch myself, and I feel my face grow hot when Yistol gives me a curious look. I think you must be diligent to stay so on top of things all the time, and I think that's really admirable. There's a pause before Yistol smiles, letting out a low exhale that might have been a laugh. Thanks, Vil, but you're also a hard worker, aren't you? The wind is stronger as soon as we clear the stairwell and step onto the rooftop. The jagged shapes of the city spread out before us. Some buildings loom tall, trailing veins and feathery strands of flesh that sway in the wind, reflecting the green sunlight of damp spots. Others spread wide, covering entire blocks like flat plains of bone-dry rock. The streets are full of people bustling about, no doubt busy attending to the pre-eclipse business. Even from up here, it's obvious that everyone is excited. There's a strange electric energy in the air. It's an amazing view. It's beautiful, isn't it? Yistol walks over to the edge of the roof, near the spire. He lays a hand on it, and the flesh pulses gently against the touch of his fingers, the tower's eyes languidly scanning the horizon. I come up here whenever I need a break. Looking at a city like this helps me regain my focus. Of course, it makes sense that even someone like Yistol would need a place to rest once in a while. He slowly takes a seat at the edge of the building, then beckons me over, so I oblige, trotting over and take his seat beside him, legs dangling over the edge. A stiff breeze blows past us, and I'm suddenly made much more aware of how high up we are. I don't think I'm particularly afraid of heights, but I still feel a small thrill chase down my spine as I look down. Yistol doesn't seem afraid at all though. Partly because he's used to being up so high, I imagine, but partly because he seems completely immersed in thoughts. The green of the sun washes over us as he gazes over the cityscape. His exoskeleton is beautifully glossy despite his exhaustion, warm sunlight bouncing off the sharp angles of his cheeks, and wiry strands of hair. His teeth are very white when he finally opens his mouth to speak. Pausing for a moment, he finally forms words. I want to speak to you about a hypothetical situation. A hypothetical situation? Yes, hypothetical. He's curiously specific about that. A hypothetical. I keep that observation to myself and only nod. Sure, I don't know how helpful I can be, but I'm always happy to try. Yistol nods in response, ruminating over his thoughts for a moment longer before speaking. Let's say you have the chance to help a lot of people. However, it comes at a cost. You need to give up something very important to yourself in order to help those people. There's nobody forcing you to do it. There's no punishment if you don't help those people, and nobody will chastise you for not wanting to pay that price. It is purely your decision whether to pay the price and help those people. What do you think you would do, Vil? It's a tough question. He still doesn't look at me. His gaze still directed over the cityscape, and I try to see what he's seeing as I think that question over. How should I answer? Man, would help be significant? Even if I think the matter over, it's hard to give a solid answer without a better idea of how significant the help would be. Well, it might depend on how helpful it'd be after paying the price. I want to be helpful to people, of course, but even helping people on a regular basis takes amount of time and energy, I think. So it's a little hard to imagine what kind of help would be worth paying a significant cost for. Yistol nods slowly in response, still looking out over the city. His voice is a quiet murmur when he responds. Yes, of course. Then let me try putting it in a slightly different way. Still hypothetical? Still hypothetical. Yistol seems slightly amused by that clarification, eyes narrowed in a thin smile. You would, hypothetically speaking, like to be a better person, yes? I nod. Of course. I think everyone probably wants to be a better person if possible. Then let's say there's a way for you to objectively become a better version of yourself. Not in a nebulous, vague way. It won't be that you'll have to be wiser or more experienced or more thoughtful. You'll objectively become a better version of what you are now. An upgrade, if you will. Do you think you would want that? Yeah, sure. I nod. I think it's always good to try and improve. But I'd also assume that there's some sort of downside to something like that. Fair point. Then, building on the same scenario, Yistol turns to look at me. The sunlight glimmers off his metallic strands of hair, highlighting the sharp angles of his eyelids, and I find myself sitting up straighter. All my focus is on considering his words. This feels like something important to him, so I want to consider it with the gravity it deserves. Let's say you can make that improvement. You guarantee that it will make you feel better, and you'll be able to be better at your job. Everyone will admire you for it. There are practically no downsides to the improvement itself. But your relationship to someone you value will change drastically. They can't be changed back. Not broken, mind you. You'll still have a close relationship with that person, but it will be different. How do you feel about that? It's hard to answer immediately. Mixed emotions trickle down my head, and I need to filter through them. A significant part of me wants to become better myself, of course, but I also value my relationship with people. It's a tough question, isn't it? Yistol's eyes narrow, his expression gentle as he studies my face. Sorry, I know it's a strange hypothetical to spring on someone, but I value your opinion. I'd really appreciate it if you would tell me your honest thoughts about it. I can sort of understand what Yistol is getting at. If I try hard enough, I repeat his words in my head, ruminating over each one. Well, becoming an unequivocally better person at a cost of a changed relationship. How do I feel about that? I mean, to be a better person, yet also being able to help more people at the same time or help them in a much more significant way? Heck, yeah, I will go for that. It would be hard to immediately turn down a situation like that. I'd have to give it some thought. I would definitely consider it. Immediately saying yes wouldn't be right, I think. But I will give it some serious thought, and I want to know more before committing, if possible. After all, my relationship to somebody is changing. I want to be able to prepare for it. Huh. Yistol's gaze remained fixed on me. You value your relationships to other people a lot, don't you? Of course. Like, hell yeah. Answer without hesitating, punctuating my words with a nod. Yistol smiles at that, a thin crescent moon of sharp teeth visible past narrow lips. I thought you'd say that. He gives a long sigh as he sits back, propping himself up on his arms as he gazes out over the city. Though he still looks as controlled and calm as ever, his posture seems more relaxed than usual, in conjunction with his pensive expression. It lends a strange air of vulnerability, like he's struggling with something he's never struggled with before. Yistol, yeah? I know you said that these are all hypothetical questions, but if you want to talk about anything non-hypothetical, I'd also be alright with it. Yistol cants his head, gaze cast aside in thought. A breeze whips past us, sending wiry strands of his hair floating up around him. They practically sparkle in the warm sunlight. His voice is a little softer, almost blending in with the distant buzz of the city as he murmurs. You're very kind to us, Bill. Thank you. I suppose I haven't been terribly subtle. It's true that there are things I've been thinking about very seriously. But alas, we should be getting back to work, shouldn't we? There's a gentle tap-tap of his feet against the rooftop as he rises, Two clear sounds like the knocks of bones against rock. His body is lithe and serpentine when he stretches his arms, fingers playing out wide for a second as he extends his limbs as far as they can reach. Looking up at him from where I'm sitting on the rooftop, I'm all the more aware of how this person who's so important to the city's well-being is also just a single individual facing tremendous pressure. Yistol exhales slowly, the noise whittling past the sharp points of his teeth before he lowers his arms. His body language is graceful and casual once more as he reaches down to pat my shoulder. His fingers squeeze briefly before releasing. Let's head back in, shall we? Of course, I climb to my feet and follow after him as he starts heading back down the stairwell and into his office. Yistol doesn't say anything more as he leads the way down the stairwell. The breeze carries the sounds of the city, filtering them past our ears. Thoughtful murmurs, someone's excited shouts, thumps of running feet, pausing in my steps. I close my eyes and turn towards the endless expanse of buildings, but it's hard to make out any individual sounds even if I focus. All I know is that the city is a buzz of energy, excited for the eclipse. Things seem to be progressing more smoothly, even with my drier attitude towards the eclipse. I find myself growing a little excited for the potential that day holds. When I snap out of my reverie and hurry to catch up with Yistol, he holds the office door open for me, smiling kindly as he ushers me inside first. Thank you so much for keeping me company, Phil. I truly appreciate it. The subtle signs of worry and vulnerability he'd shown while discussing these hypotheticals with me are gone. Just like that, there's only the calm, collected, gentle Yistol that I've always known standing before me, holding out my pack. Just getting a few minutes to relax and speak with you is incredibly refreshing. I'm grateful for your time. But I do hope it didn't cause you much trouble on your route. Not at all. I give the most assuring nod I can. It's a white lie in the sense that it did tighten my schedule, but I'm fairly confident it didn't cause me any issues. I can make this work out. I swiftly tie my pack over my shoulders once more, jostling it to make sure it's secure before turning towards the door. I'll be going then. I hope the rest of the day goes smoothly. Don't push yourself too hard, alright? Of course. Take care, Phil. Even a few of the other workers glanced over, giving me a brief wave. I return the gesture as I pull the door open. I do one last check of my pack as I step outside, and as the doors close behind me, I catch the last glimpse of Yistol through the narrowing sliver of an opening. He meets my gaze and flashes me a smile, the corner of his eye squinting, a look that feels like genuine connection. And then the door shut. A sizable part of me wants to linger. After all, I'm sure Yistol had more to say. The topics he brought up felt far too specific and heavy to be mere hypotheticals, and it doesn't sit well with me to leave the subject hanging in the air. But still, both he and I had work to do. Too many people will be left trouble if we don't tend to our task. And so I turn away towards the street, taking a deep breath. The claws on my feet dig in as I take 1, 2 steps. My next steps come faster, my gait winding as my pace picks up. Then I ramp up into a gallop, the scenery around me smearing as I gather speed. My own worries can come later. For now, I need to focus. It wouldn't do to leave people without salt when such an important day is coming up. Thanks for the delivery. No problem. Hey, you be careful too, alright? Will do. Thank you. I have to hurry. I'm usually never this behind schedule. If I move quick, then I should still be able to finish all my deliveries before the end of the day and avoid getting to anyone late. But I can't afford to delay any longer. My feet skid across the dirt as I turn a corner, my claws raking deep furrows into the dirt as I strain back up without dropping my pace. My next 2 clients are absent from their homes. As much as it pains me to say, that's good for me today. I quickly slot their salt packets into their boxes and resume running. I'll say hi to them on another day when I have more time. I'm sure they're also busy with their own eclipse preparations. Distracted thinking of any other routes I can take without skipping any stops on my route, I don't hear the sounds of approaching footsteps the instant I step into the park. And I certainly don't expect a hefty bundle of fur and fangs to come bursting out of the foliage to my immediate left. Oh, he's right there! Vil! I don't manage to stop quickly enough. Neither does Brandon. He collides squarely with me, knocking us both into the grass. I was waiting for you. You were? I gently push at Brandon's shoulder so that he'll get off of me. Not that this is a particularly bad position to be in. Brandon's fur is quite soft and clean today. He must have taken a shower after last night's exploring, and his body is very warm. But it's still heavy, and getting pressed into the grass for too long might make dirt seep through my pack and taint the salt. Brandon moves back obligingly, clambering to his feet and holding his hands out so I can stand. His hand is huge, the pads of his paws squished slightly into my palm. You're still on your route, right? You're a little later than usual today, so I was kind of worried I'd miss you. Yeah, I had something kind of important to take care of. I'll run with you. Thanks. He's never done this before. Still, it's not like I mind the company, and Brandon is in fantastic shape. Even as I run on a steady jog, he keeps up with me just by walking quickly. See, I found something interesting last night. So that's why he was waiting for me. He must have been really excited to tell someone. What was it? I'm not sure. Huh. But I'm doing my best to figure it out. That sounds difficult. Brandon looks around before he continues speaking, like he's making sure nobody else is around. Visibility is poor in the park anyway, so even if someone were eavesdropping, I'm not sure if he'd be able to spot them. Nonetheless, he looks satisfied that we're alone and continues. He's so excited that his voice is starting to get gravelly at the edges, like he's fighting back the urge to start barking. I think it's really important, you know. I've never seen anything like it before. I think it could change things. If that's what I think it might be, then this might be huge. I might go down in history as someone incredible. But I'm really excited to figure out more about it. He's so enthusiastic that it's infectious. I can't help smiling as I nod. I don't know much about exploring, but I hope it's something great. You're always working really hard, and it'd be nice if people got a chance to really appreciate all the work you put into your job. Brandon beams, showing off all his teeth. We jog along in silence for a few moments. By the way, did you put in any order for any salt today? Brandon looks a little like he's startled out of his thoughts by that. His fur's puffed out a little larger than usual. Oh yeah, I did. Would you like it now? Sure. It's slow to a walk so I can fumble with my pack, carefully extracting one of the salt packets without dropping any of the others. Here you go. Hey, do you have a few moments to spare? It's my turn to be caught off guard. Still holding out Brand's packet, I give him a curious look. I want to show you something. He's so excited, he's drooling slightly. A thin string of spittle hanging from his jaw. It must be his discovery from the other day. Well, I feel a little bad, but I have to turn him down. No! Oh no! I don't have that much time to spare after spending time with Yistol too. Sorry, Bratton. Things are kind of hectic today, so I have to hurry. Maybe I can meet you after my route's over? Brand's ear have tittled down a smidge, the wagging of his tail slowing down significantly. No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I guess you're a little behind today, huh? He's pretending to be fine, but I can tell he's a little unhappy about this. You sure? I'd be happy to come back after I'm done delivering. I just want to keep anyone else waiting. Brandon considers it for a moment before shaking his head, his tail's wagging with gusto once more. Yeah, it's fine. On second thought, I guess I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be showing you. So I'll check and come back later when you're not busy and make sure that you won't get in trouble for it. That'd be great. Thanks for the invitation, though, Bratton. No problem. He reaches out his massive paw, possibly to clap it on my back, but he course corrects it when he remembers that I'm wearing the bundle over my shoulder and ruffles my hair instead. His claws are huge and sharp, but they graze against my brow. I like you a lot, you know. Aw, I like you a lot too, you big fluffo. If it were anyone else, I'd suspect this to be a well-constructed attempt to guilt-trip me, but Brandon isn't the type to do anything like that, so I managed to smile as I gingerly duck out from under his paw. I like you a lot too, so I'll be looking forward to seeing your big discovery in the future. Sure thing. The slick of damp underfoot gives way to firm rock bed as we near the edge of the park. Oh yeah, here. I'd still be holding on to Brand's salt packet and hold it out to him. Right, thanks. Be careful on the rest of your route, okay? Will do. I tighten the bundle over my shoulder to make sure it's firmly in place, then head off at a steady jog. Halfway down the block, I turn to glance over my shoulder. Sure enough, Brand's still there, watching me. I raise my hand to give him a small wave, and he excitedly returns the gesture before finally turning and sinking into the foliage of the park. I can't help but wonder what it was that Brand wanted to show me. Part of me feels like I may have missed something big. But for now, I have to focus on my job. My next delivery is a few good blocks away, so I turn the corner and ramp up into a speedy gallop. Here you go. Hard at work today too, huh? Yes, sir. Things have been a little hectic today. Can't be helped, huh? Well, I won't be keeping you. Be careful now. Thanks. Have a nice day. I'm starting to get a little bit out of breath. I usually manage to do my entire route at a steady pace, but today's been a day of ups and downs. I've had to rush a lot more after talking with Yistol, and I can feel my legs starting to ache a little. I slow from my sprint to a jog so I can go down my list of notes. I've finished most of my route now, with only a few more blocks to run, which is good. A quick glance up to the sky confirms that the suns are starting to set already. The sky is tingling their usual musty green. It's starting to get late, which means I'm cutting it a little close. The palpable tension in the air has been rising all day too. There are more people hanging around the street than usual, some rousy and causing trouble, others pressed together in quiet intimacy. I turn the corner to take a shortcut down the street and find my foot splashing into a puddle of red. The metallic stench that lingers in the air is unmistakable, and it cuts through its signature sting of salt. No doubt, the remnants of a punishment salt bath. Or multiple salt baths, possibly. The metal tubs used for salt baths tend to leave behind dark rings of moisture on the ground. There are three circles overlapping each other. I can't tell if it's a result of one tub being jostled around or multiple tubs being used in quick succession. I move quickly past this site, both because I can't afford to loiter, but also because the combined smell of blood and salt is making me hungry. I haven't had the chance to take a break to eat anything today. I risk a brief glance as I head back down the street. I left behind a trail of dark footprints, radiating out from the pool of blood, but fading with each step until they vanish. The pool of blood is still there. It will seep into the ground eventually, leaving a dark stain for a while. Kinda like an eclipse, huh? A big happening that will leave an impression for quite a while. I'm not a very poetic person. I feel a little smug for thinking of a comparison like that, but I can't spare too much time for self-congratulatory nonsense. I drag my thoughts away from that drying puddle of blood and look back towards the street. Have a nice day, Vil. Thanks, you too. Time's getting awfully tight, but I should be able to finish my route on time if I keep up this pace. And I make the mistake of breathing in a quiet relief sigh to myself as I dash past a block of closed storefronts, closed for the eclipse, and round a corner quickly enough that my claws skid on the ground. I almost slam right into the bustling crowd that's loitering around, breathing huge lungfuls of sweet, honey-scented air. What's going on? It's usually never this crowded. Sorry, excuse me. Passing through. Sorry, I have to get through here. I gingerly squeeze past a crowd of people. It turns out that these people have formed a line that trails out from Niar's B store, but the line has grown tangled and messy as it trails out into the streets. Getting past them is a struggle, and more than a few people shoot me dirty looks that I have to pacify by shifting the bundle on my shoulders and clarifying that I'm just here to make a delivery. Most grumble, but begrudgingly let me through. A cluster of people block my path near the entrance, and I wait for a few people to finish their business and exit so I can slip in as the next customers enter. I check over the bundle while waiting, peeking through the folds of fabric to check how many more deliveries I have to make. Although I lose count when I'm distracted by a conversation going on nearby. You've heard the rumors about the guy running the store, right? I haven't. What did they say about him? They say this guy sucks energy out of people. I roll my eyes while my head's ducked. I haven't heard these rumors myself, but it sounds silly. I've never heard of anyone eating anything other than water and salt with additives, much less sucking the energy out of other people. No way, that's so creepy, right? But it makes sense, doesn't it? With how gruff this guy usually is. Yeah, he always feels kinda off, you know? Maybe that's why he has a store, you know? To lure in victims. The two of them laugh raucously. I just tie my bundle across my shoulders and ignore whatever else they're saying. It's all nonsense. Nya shouldn't have to put up with this stuff. He's a good guy. Hopefully these idiots don't actually say this stuff to his face. Fortunately, a small cluster of excited customers exit the store the next moment, and I take the chance to slip inside, murmuring that I'm just here to make a delivery and I'll be out soon. Inside the store, I manage to weave my way past the crowds of people, looking at the bees, and find Nya near the back of the store, where he mans the counter alone. All of his tentacles are hard at work, managing 6 different tasks at once, and his teeth are bared as he breathes in deep, rasping puffs. He must be stressed. Hey Nya! Hello, Phil. He doesn't even turn my way. Not that I can blame him. He's busy dealing with a customer on one side, packing a bottle of honey with one set of tentacles, and soothing an agitated bee with 2 others. The smell of honey in the air is almost dizzying, stirred up by the constant movements of people in the store, and I can't help but take a deep breath before busying myself by undoing my bundle. Busy day today, huh? Sure is. His tentacles swiftly wrap a bottle of honey in fabric, and tie a piece of twine with a bow to secure it. His customers thank him profusely before leaving with their purchase in hand, babbling excitedly to their friend about how tonight will be a special treat. Seeing everyone happy about their purchases make it worth it though. His voice is as gruff as ever, but the corners of his lips quirk just a fraction. He seems really happy when his customers are happy. Seems like it. I hurry to pull a package of salt from my bundle, double checking my notes to make sure I have the right packet for him, then lay it on the counter. I hand it to him, but all of his tentacles are occupied, packing 2 different orders at the same time. I'll leave this here for you, alright? With how busy the store is, it would be best if I don't take up too much of Niar's time. I give a little nod and turn to leave when a touch of a tentacle against my shoulder stops me. Vil. He sounds serious. He always sounds a little serious, of course, but this feels different. Yeah? There's a pause. Niar's tentacles never stop moving, neatly processing and wrapping orders for customers standing on the other side of the counter. But the tentacles resting against my shoulder only squeezes slightly. He addresses a customer first, wishing them a nice day as he hands them their package before turning slightly towards me. If you could spare the time, would you mind helping me out a little? I'm a little surprised, not about the request itself. Any reasonable person will ask for help managing a store that's busy, but because I've never seen Nya ask anyone for help before, I can't help but feel a little flustered that he'd ask. That's it, I need to think this over for a moment. Unfortunately, I don't have much time left for today, and I do have a few more deliveries to make. Reaching back, I test the weight of my bundle with my hands, trying to gauge how much time I would need to deliver all of these before the end of the day. I should be able to hit all the stops as long as I hurry, but if I stop here to help Nya, no. I really can't risk getting people their deliveries late, especially on the day before the eclipse. I don't want to risk ruining people's preparations for a big day. Sorry Nya, but I'm on a pretty tight schedule today. That's understandable. You did come a little later than you usually do today. Yeah, things have been pretty hectic today, so I'm a bit behind. I don't want to be late with anyone else's deliveries today. Nya nods. His tentacles keep working. I'm really sorry. I wish I could help. I can come around after my route's over. If you need any help closing up shop. He shakes his head. His attention already seems to be wandering away from me. Tentacles artfully wrapping up another bottle of honey even as he speaks. It's alright. The worst of the rush should be over soon. You should get some rest after your work. Are you sure? There's no trouble coming by after my route. He nods again. Thanks for the offer, but it's fine. I feel like I've put somewhat of a damper on things, but I guess it couldn't be helped. Sometimes things just work out that way. Alright then. Hopefully things won't be too hard for you. We're nearing the end of the day after all. I tighten the straps on my bundles to make sure it's firmly in place. It's grown pretty light by now. The fabric weighed down by only a handful of salt packets. But that doesn't mean my remaining deliveries are any less important. Behind me, I can hear a few customers huff impatiently. No doubt they think I'm holding up the line. Take care. Most of Nya's tentacles are still hard at work, wrapping up bottles and soothing agitated bees. But it still spares me one to give me a small wave. I wave back as I step away from the counter. You too. Good luck. Nya doesn't respond anymore, already busying himself tending to the next customer in line. They want to look at the bees Nya has up for sale, since they're considering outright buying one. He must be big spenders. Nya steps out from behind the counter to lead them to the cages. I guess I should go. The crowd outside the store has thinned out a little, but still sizable. At least those people from earlier who've been gossiping have either gotten into the store or have wandered off. Tired of waiting, I gingerly squeeze my way past the waiting line and back onto the streets, inhaling deeply. Already the sweet scent of honey is much thinner, cut through the musty smell natural to the air. Overhead, the skies are starting to streak through the darker shades of green as the sun dips towards the horizon. So there's a strong urge to linger, to wait to see if the store will quiet down at all, and even turn back inside to help Nya. I know I shouldn't, so I don't look back as I dig my heels into the ground and take off at its quick sprint down the street. At least these last few deliveries won't take too long. Thanksville, seems like you have a busy day today, huh? You're cutting it pretty close. Yeah, things have been a little hectic today. I can imagine, since tomorrow's a big day and all. Good luck. You should rest up. Thanks. I will. Have a good night. You too. Even smiling feels exhausting after a long day, but I still make sure to wave as I trot off, pointing at my pack to make sure all my deliveries have been taken care of. All done and barely a minute to spare. I really did cut things pretty close. At the same time, I don't regret it. It feels like what happened today was pivotal and absolutely worth an extra bit of running. I end up taking the long route back home, backtracking a little bit. I walk past Nya's store, which has gone quite a bit. I can still see a flicker of movements inside, but it looks like it's mostly just Nya cleaning up the store by himself. I cut through the trees. The atmosphere here is different after dark. The spindly trees casting twisting shadows over the uneven ground. The air feels colder too, and it feels different without Bratton's boisterous presence walking by me. I walk past the Overlook office, which continues to watch silently over the city. The spire's eyeballs lazily cast over the landscape, so they blink slowly now and again, as if growing tired. I think of Yistol in its Overlook pod, devoting his life to guarding the city. Tomorrow is bound to be a big obstacle for him, and my chest aches with the desire to help him in some way. I give the spire a small wave. Even if he's bound to be too occupied with such a small gesture, it's the thought that counts. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the spire's largest eye gives a slow blink in response, but still eases my mind a little as I turn away. My thoughts are a little fuzzy as I walk back home, watching the three suns sink out of view, one at a time. When I get back to my place, I just grab a pack of salt and collapse on my bed. I usually don't eat in bed, but I'm too tired to care today. I roll over on my back to unwrap the fabric and lazily bite off a small mouthful of salt. The familiar sting spreads throughout my mouth, hot and sharp, and I try not to think about it as it dissolves on my tongue. Even eating feels exhausting. I turn my head to glance towards my window, past the closed curtains. I can see a sliver of the night sky, 2 moons lazily traversing that dark expanse. Though I bring the salt to my mouth for a second bite, I find that I just can't be bothered. Early in the morning. I do the bare minimum to wrap the salt back up so it won't scatter over my bed during the night, but that's the absolute limit of my energy for the night. Even knowing I have to get up to clean up before falling asleep, my limbs feel so leaden and I feel myself drifting off. But even as sleep begins to overtake me, I find myself thinking about the events of the day. A small shiver of nervous anticipation races down my spine, all the way to my toes, prompting me to wrap my blanket closer over my body. So much for a quiet eclipse. Tomorrow will probably be an important day. I jerk awake to the sound of my alarm beetle buzzing. I immediately close my eyes and roll back over, burying my face into my pillow. The desire to go back to sleep is tremendous, which is pretty unusual. I almost never have trouble waking up in the morning, but my limbs still hurt a bit after sprinting yesterday. My thoughts immediately snap to the strange talk I had with Yistol, and that suddenly wakes me up. I jolt upright in an instant, my drowsiness dissipating like so much smoke. I sit up in bed, scuffing a hand over my face and picking off the pus that's dried up over my eye during the night. A cursory check of the time which tells me I'm not too late, but I should move quickly if I want to be on time, so I do. And I try very hard not to think about the eclipse. I'll have the time to spare for that once I'm actually on my route. Huh? I told you, take the day off. I made it on time to work, squeezing past some loitering crowds in the street, jogging the last stretch of my way to the salt plant, only to find the place quieter than usual. So there are still the familiar rustle of salt pouring into filters, the scrape of long poles mixing through vats, and the glop of honey being emptied by the bucket. There are fewer workers than usual. The boss seemed a little less hairy than usual too, and when he beckoned me over, he sprang that surprise on me. Delivery roster today's short. He has the delivery list in hand, and flips through the pages, swiftly double-checking each one with a stubby pencil. Turns out a lot of people have asked for their delivery for today to put on hold, heading out of town because of the eclipse, I imagine, or have plans of some sort. Whatever the reason, we barely have half of the usual number of deliveries. He scratches the scales on his snout with the back end of his pencil. Felt silly making all of you run your routes, so I reorganized the routes, and a few of you have barely taken any days off, so I'm giving you today to rest. Go enjoy the eclipse. I automatically give a dip on the head in thanks, but it still hasn't properly sunk in. I built my daily schedule around my work, and suddenly being told that I have the whole day off to myself is jarring. The boss seems to notice my hesitation and gives me a hard clap on the back. Even if he meant it playfully, he's a strong guy, and that casual whap is almost enough to bowl me over. He laughs as I wheeze. Go on, get. You're young. Go do something fun. You deserve it. You're sure there aren't anything else I should be doing? You doubting me? No, sir. Leaving the salt plant empty-handed so early in the day feels profoundly weird, and I'm not sure what to do with my hands as I head towards the door. It's almost a relief when the boss calls me right before I reach the door. Right, Vil, hold on a second. Yes, boss? He tromps over, digging through the pocket of his apron, pulling out a few scraps of paper. He returns most of them to his pockets, but holds one out to me. Somebody from the Overlook office came by earlier and gave me this. Say it's for you. Yistol sent somebody? The boss nods. The piece of paper is neatly folded into a square, and unfolding it reveals a short note written in Yistol's impeccable handwriting. Vil, I was hoping I could see you today if you aren't too busy. I'll be at the Overlook offices all day, so please visit me if you're able. Please don't worry about it if you have other plans. Thanks. It's written so politely, which is very much like him. I smile to myself as I fold the note back up and tuck it into my pocket. Something wrong? No, nothing's wrong. Yistol just wants to see me about something. Hey, boss? Yeah? What are you gonna do during the eclipse? He smiles, the mask straining to stay in place on his snout. I can almost picture all of the teeth he's showing. The boss doesn't smile often, but when he does, it's very kind. So it's a pity the mask is in the way. I'll be watching the eclipse with my partners while we enjoy a packet of mercury salt together. Mercury salt? That's right. He gives a proud huff, arms over his chest. Jin thought it was extravagant, but I know Dirth loves it, so I went for it. As if I'll let this special day go by without doing something nice for the loves of my life. That sounds really nice. I hope you have a nice evening. We will. So, you should too. I wish my boss a good day and leave soon afterwards. I don't want to delay him any further when there's still work to do. Hopefully he and everyone else at the plant will be able to finish up quickly and enjoy the rest of their days. So, I do still feel some guilt about taking off by myself when everyone else is working hard. I also don't want to waste their time that was given kindly to me. Standing out in the streets, I watch people go by for a few minutes. It's actually not as crowded as I feared it would be. No doubt a lot of people are traveling, or are already holed up with people important to them. Far down the street, I can see what looks like a small brawl, but that might also be something important to the people involved. I do hope it doesn't last too long. It would be awful to spend the eclipse day in a salt bath. Tugging my cloak closer around myself, I inhale deeply. The air feels electric, stinging at my nose. Alright, I guess I should get moving. The streets are abuzz with activity as I head towards the Overlook office. If there was a strange electricity in the air yesterday, then the very atmosphere is crackling with energy today. As I walk past the popular garment store on Main Street, the window shatters as a body comes hurtling through it. Fragments of organic glass go skittering in all directions as the defenestrated individual rolls across the pavement, shouting and howling. A second figure comes bowling out the store moments afterwards, letting on the first in a vicious tackle. There's only a short pause before fists start flying as both parties attempt to pummel each other. A small crowd gathers around the fighters. Some people spectate quietly, while others cheer and shout. It doesn't matter if these fighters are strangers or not. They are no doubt engaging in something that matters a great deal to them on this auspicious day. Fights too are important after all. This may be a way for them to settle a long-standing grudge. I peer past the onlookers for a few minutes before continuing my way, giving the crowd a wide berth just in case. It wouldn't do to get embroiled in a big brawl after all. I've just put the fight behind me when a pair of Overlook officers run past me, shouting for the crowd to back off and give the fighters room. My steps slow as I glance over my shoulders. The fight is still going on, judging by the shouts and scuffling noises, and the officers wave their batons to get the attention of onlookers, urging them to step away. Of course, it's the Overlook's job to ensure that things go smoothly on Eclipse Day. It wouldn't do for strangers to interrupt a personal fight or for the fight to involve third parties. It must be difficult. There's so much going on today. Up ahead, a loud shout catches my attention. A small crowd is gathered around this tall figure who stands with arms raised, shouting indistinctly. I think they're announcing something important. The crowd gathered around them seems excited. This too is probably something the Overlook officers will have to keep an eye on. I can see the Overlook spire up ahead, looming above the other buildings. The spire's eyes dart back and forth rapidly. Even from this distance, I can see the spire's flesh pulsing rapidly in spots, frantically pumping blood through its veins. I don't think I've ever seen it so active. Yistol must be working harder than he ever has. The note he left for me seems so candid, but Yistol always seems to try and seem at ease. I can't imagine this is actually easy, even for him. The fight behind me seems like it's escalating. The heavy, meaty sounds of knuckles pummeling into flesh echoes down the street, but I don't pay them any attention. Instead, I quicken my pace, heading towards the Overlook officers at a run. I don't want to keep Yistol waiting any more than absolutely necessary. Excuse me? My first thought is that the office feels weirdly quiet as I push the door open, which is odd. Shouldn't it be bustling with activity today? And then I realize what's going on. The office is emptier than usual. Some desks looks like they're abandoned in a hurry, paperwork thrown in all directions. Others are manned by their usual occupants, piled high with papers and communication bladders, their tube crisscrossing the floor like cobwebs. There's a constant furious scratching of pen tips on paper, punctuated only when a worker grabs a bladder to whisper furiously into it. The communication tubes pulse non-stop, carrying a steady stream of messages out the office to the Overlook officers out on the field, I assume. Doing my best not to interrupt their concentration, I make my way past their desk towards the Overlook pod in the corner. So immersed in their jobs, the workers all ignore me as I step over their communication tubes. Yistol? The eyes on the pod are half-lidded, and it's not until I speak up that they blink open and turn to me. I got your note, but I can come back later if you're busy. There's a brief moment before the eyes simultaneously shut, then the pod cracks open with a wet squelching noise. No, I'm glad you came. Yistol's voice is muffled by the sounds of fluids slowing off of him. His exoskeleton sheds the coating of slime easily, and when he brushes his hand over his body, it comes off in a viscous strand, plopping back into the pod's pools in a big blob. Thank you for dropping by on such short notice, Vil. It was a rather sudden request, so I wasn't sure if you're able to make the time. He bends down to brush the last of the pod slime off his body, then carefully extracts one leg from the pod, letting the slime drip off it completely before he sets it on the floor. Then he repeats the process with the other foot. Then his balance slips, perhaps because of a residual streak of slime. His foot skids sideways and he topples over. Fortunately, my reflexes are quick enough that I can prop him up before he hits the floor or crashes back into the pod. Whoa, you alright? He still seems stunned for a moment, eyes wide in shock. His gaze slides over to me, studying my face before he gives a small nod. Yeah, thank you. I suppose that could have been dangerous if I hit the floor. Behind me, I hear a worker ask if everything's okay, but most of the others don't even seem to have noticed anything happening. Their focus is incredible. Perhaps it's what it takes to keep things running smoothly during the eclipse. I carefully help Yistol back on his feet, finally realizing just how exhausted he seems. Without the coating of slime, it's more obvious that his exoskeleton is lacking its usual luster. His eyes half-lit as he gingerly rubs a hand against the soft connective tissue near his jaw. I'm afraid I rather lost track of time, and I haven't been able to rest in a while. I might be more exhausted than I thought. You need rest. I keep my voice firm as I looked up at him, meeting his gaze steadily. Of course, but my work. Yistol is clearly distracted, eyes closed as he struggles with his thoughts, but he clearly needs to rest. I need to persuade him somehow. Oh gosh. Well, he needs to take care of himself, like honestly. He can't just think in the short term. Even in this eclipse, it's important. He also needs to think of the future. Yistol, I know your work is important, but this won't be your only eclipse, right? You're our Overlook. You'll be looking over the city for a long time, so you can't run yourself ragged like this. So please, rest for a moment. There was also something you wanted to talk to me about, right? Yistol's attention snaps over to me, as if I said something terribly important. He blinks hard before giving a small nod. Right, of course. He inhales and exhales slowly. I watch the small portions of his exoskeleton swell with that breath, settling back down as he empties his lungs. After 2 or 3 more slow breaths, he seems much calmer and offers me a smile. His usual smile. You're right. I think a short break would be good. Even though he still looks exhausted, it's good to see him at least acting like he usually does. I can't help but give him a small sigh of relief. Yeah, that sounds great. We end up back on the rooftop, beside the dormant spire. It too seems a little strained. The eyes seem somewhat bloodshot as they lazily scan the horizon, and when I gingerly touch one of the protruding lumps of flesh, it feels a little hot. The skin throbs slightly beneath my touch. I can feel the steady pulse of fluids beneath the stretch of skin. I'm afraid I've overworked it somewhat. Yistol approaches slowly, his hands running across a large vein snaked over the handrail. It's not in any danger of serious damage. Of course, I'm sure I will give out long before the tower ever does, but I'm afraid I don't yet have the experience and intuition that the previous Overlooks did. They could pinpoint the sources of danger and commotion and look towards them more quickly. Lacking that intuition, I have to search the city more frantically in search of any trouble, and it strains the eyes. I apologize. His voice is gentle and he directs the last statement at the tower. The tower is silent, of course. Not that I could ever speak, but without an Overlook present in the pod, it doesn't even glance at Yistol's way. It simply quietly gazes over the city, automatically searching for any significant signs of activity that it's sure to find plenty of. Now that we're on the rooftop, I'm much more cognizant of how unusually active the city is. Here and there, colorful plumes of smoke crawls up from between buildings, lit from beneath by flickering lights of fires. Celebratory fires, perhaps, or malicious ones, probably. To our east, I can make out a large crowd gathering at an intersection. It boils with activity. Though from this distance, it's hard to make out what the individuals are doing. From all around us, the sounds of shouting and cheering and screaming carries on the wind. The breeze always whips away those voices before we can make out specific words, but the impression we get is always the same. Today is a day unlike any other in recent memory. Controlling that chaos must be a gargantuan task. I can't imagine how difficult it is for Yistol and the other Overlook workers. Right. Yistol? Yes? I've been lost in thought as I stared out over the city, and Yistol had taken the chance to quietly take a seat beside me, his legs swinging off in the empty air off the ledge of the building as he looks up at me. I take a seat as I continue. The office seemed much emptier than usual. Did something happen? I assumed it would be much busier in the eclipse. Oh, that. I'm afraid we lost quite a few workers today. Officers too. They are individuals after all, with their own priorities and desires. It may be our duty to watch over the city, but it's difficult to place duty above something truly important to you. Say traveling someplace to meet someone very important, or settling a lifelong grudge against a very bitter foe. Yistol's voice is steady and soft. There's no trace of ill will or bitterness in his voice. In fact, part of me wishes they were here to help, of course. But another part of me is grateful. It means they trust me enough to look over the city despite their absence. I should have prepared for this in the first place. It was my mistake not anticipating it. so I'm grateful they trust in me regardless. He seems pensive. I badly want to comfort him, to make him feel better, but it's difficult knowing what to say. They were right to trust you, weren't they? I'll just have to do my best. Things are going smoothly so far. After all, I passed by some commotion on the way here, but the officers got there really quick, and it didn't look like it was getting out of control. They're doing a great job keeping the city safe. I suppose I'm holding on so far, but that isn't enough. He still seems absorbed in his thoughts. I'm willing to interrupt him. I wait quietly until he goes on. I've managed to avoid any catastrophes so far, but only barely. I've had to claw my way through some tight situations already, and I'm sure things will have escalated while I'm taking this break. I'll also have to scramble to catch up once I'm back on my pod, but you were also right that I need to periodically rest to maintain my focus, or else I'm liable to make more mistakes, which will be equally bad. I don't have the experience or composure or intuition that the previous Overlooks did, and so they assured me I would soon catch up to them. I'm afraid that won't be the case. Even if this eclipse goes safely, it may be sheer luck. Perhaps this year's eclipse has been on the tame side so far, so if future eclipses are rowdier, or if there is more going on, I'd surely fail to keep the city safe. There is a deficiency I need to fix. The outburst is a little shocking. In all the time I've known Yistol, he's always been unfailingly calm and kind and gentle, thoughtful and composed, someone who always kept a tight control over himself and was sharply aware of everything going on around him. There had always been an ease to him that I now realize I've been taking for granted. It hurt to think that he's been harboring these distressed thoughts and I hadn't been able to help him. Yistol, we never will know what will happen in the future. None of us. So I don't think it's fair for you to be so hard on yourself. And I don't think you're deficient in any way. Like the previous Overlook said, if you're just lacking in experience, then that'll fix itself as time goes by, won't it? You're not lacking in anything. That certainly caught his attention. He still looks over at me sharply, eyes wide, and my voice dies in my throat. Did I said something wrong? Oh, I'm sorry, Vil. I didn't mean to surprise you. I must have looked taken aback because Yistol suddenly smiles. It's a little rueful, a little embarrassed, highlighted by the way he touches a hand on his face, fingers tapping against his jaw. I was so absorbed in my thoughts, I was practically talking to myself. There's something I should have explained first. It's why I asked you to come here after all. I apologize. I shouldn't have hurried to say those things. He seems to calm down somewhat, taking another deep breath before he shifts positions to look me more directly. Vil, have you ever met one of my kind before? The conversation's not going exactly where I expected it to. Regardless, I give the question some more serious thought, then shake my head. I don't think so. Not to my memory. Alright, then I assume you aren't familiar with our life cycles either. Probably not. Then please, let me explain. It won't take terribly long. Myself and many others who have served as Overlook, our kind has always been perceptive. We have always excelled in pinpointing anomalies in our surroundings and addressing them as quickly as possible. Of course, we don't take this for granted. In the long history of this tower, there have been many who have served without being the same kind as us, and not all of our kind are fit to serve as Overlook either. It's a position we work towards and serve with gratitude. Those of us who have selected as the Overlook have always been honored by the position and poured all of our efforts into doing the best jobs we possibly can. Because we love the city, of course, but also because we don't want to have any regrets. We don't want to look back at our time as Overlook and think, I could have done better. I could have done things differently. And in that vein, there's something all the previous Overlooks did before experiencing their first eclipse: bonding with a partner. I understand now why Yistol reacted the way he did to my attempts at comforting him. The thing he was lacking wasn't an abstract criticism of his own abilities, but something concrete he felt to do: bonding with a partner. I feel slightly embarrassed knowing I've misunderstood him so drastically, only not to show that I'm following along with his explanation. Yistol continues. You see, no matter how perceptive we are still just one individual with one mind. By bonding with a partner, however, we evolve a step further. We create a deep connection with a second mind and become something greater than the sum of its parts. And you feel like you should have made that bond before the eclipse? There's a pause before Yistol shakes his head. That isn't quite it. I don't regret having put off bonding until now. Of course, it might have made it easier on myself to survive this eclipse if I were bonded. At least, it will give me peace of mind, knowing that I become the best possible iteration of myself before facing this challenge. But I also didn't want to bond before this eclipse because the bonding process would necessitate changing my relationship with that individual. A rather drastic change, and one that can't be reversed. The puzzle pieces are falling into place. I can see now why Yistol was discussing about hypotheticals the other day. This is what he'd been worried about. My worry eases just a fraction. With a better understanding of what Yistol was trying to say, I think I can better understand his concerns. A drastic change to relationship. Thoughtlessly, I murmur the words under my breath. Yistol nods and continues. Yes, and one that can't be undone. Because we need to devour the person we're bonding with. I'm gonna be Vored? I see! That makes sense. Now that I think about it, I've read about individuals like that in the past. They're somewhat rare. Individuals who can melt into another body to become a part of them, or individuals who can absorb others to become a combined entity. Individuals who aren't complete without assimilating another into their body in some form. It must be a hard way of living, needing to depend on another in order to grow. I nod sympathetically. Alright, I'm starting to see what you mean. I guess those hypothetical questions weren't really hypothetical after all. I gave a small grin as I say it, then Yistol responds with a laugh. It's the most relaxed I've heard him sound today, and it eases some of the tension that's building in my chest. I suppose not. I'm a little embarrassed now, thinking of how transparent that was. I badly needed to get it off my chest, and was the only way I could think to bring it up to you. Oh, yeah, no worries, like, come on, like, casually asking your friend to, like, for them, like, hey, that's completely fine. Yistol looks away once more, gazing out over the city. Someone below us shouts, but we can't see them from where we're sitting, and the words are indistinct. Just one more sound adding to the ambience of the city. Vil, you're intelligent. I'm sure you can guess where I'm getting at. Of course, the air feels electric, like it's filled with sparks that burst around me as I give a small nod. I can't say I'm happy exactly, but I do feel this is a tremendously important moment. I'm glad. He smiles without looking over at me, his gaze still directed out over the rooftops as he closes his eyes. His hands, however, creep closer to me, fingers extended as if searching for something. I promptly extend my hand, allowing his fingers to touch against mine. His bones are flawlessly smooth and cool to the touch as he grazes over the back of my hand. Then he squeezes my hand, just once. His grip is gentle but tight. But even so, it wouldn't do for me to skirt around the issue. I need to talk to you about this in a straightforward and honest manner, or else it wouldn't be fair. It's just that I've never done it before, so I hope you understand if I seem somewhat nervous. Yistol exhales slowly before looking to me once more. His eyes are fixed on me intently, the amber of his sclera amplified and almost glowing in the warm sunlight. Vil, you're a highly attentive and diligent person. I've admired those traits of yours and aspire to be like you in some ways. There's a warmth to you that not everyone has, and it's the same warmth I like to show to the city. I respect you deeply. I cherish you. And in many ways, it pains me to put you in this situation. The bonding process would bring us closer than ever. Our minds would be brought together as one. We would be able to share our thoughts, our feelings, our dreams with each other with absolute clarity as an evolved being. We would always be at peace with each other. But there are things we would lose. The ability to touch and see each other like this, for one. And because our lives would become one, there are things you would lose. We would make every effort to maintain connection to your old life, of course. I deeply respect the life you have right now, and would never want to take away any of it from you. Not a single bit of it. We would talk to the same people, visit the same places, experience the same things again, but it would never be the same. A bonding process is a big decision, and I don't ask this lightly of you. I won't ask you for your answer immediately. I will only ask, Vil, would you consider bonding with me tonight during the eclipse? Hearing the facts laid out like this is dizzying, especially when they're coming from someone as usually composed and calm as Yistol. But because it's him, I can tell this is something tremendously important to him. His straightforward honesty means a great deal to me, and I give him a firm nod. Of course, I'll give it some serious thought. Yistol exhales hoarsely, as if he'd been holding his breath. Thank you. I knew you wouldn't be the type to immediately reject it or run away, but still, I was quite nervous for a moment. Thank you for listening to me, and for taking my request seriously. I appreciate it more than you can imagine. He withdraws his hand that has been touching mine and brings it up to his face, brushing his fingers against the corner of his eyes. Already, he looks like a tremendous weight has been lifted from his shoulders. And I feel the same, of course. Seeing him so relieved and hearing that important question from him without the veil of hypotheticals feels refreshing in a way. We hear the raucous bout of cheering from somewhere far away, the shouts peering off in a few stray whoops, and Yistol gives a dry laugh. I suppose that's a good sign as any, that I need to return to my work. He rises to his feet without waiting for an answer, then promptly offers me a hand. I accept it gladly, clambering upright and dusting myself off. I take it that you aren't running to your usual route today? I notice you don't have your pack. Yeah, the boss gave me a day off. He said I should enjoy the eclipse. And he's absolutely right. We're heading down the stairwell back into the office, and Yistol smiles as he holds the door open for me. It's a special day after all. I know how hard you usually work. You more than deserve a break today. You probably deserve that break as much as me, if not more. Unfortunately, not today. Maybe next time if there's a slow day. Yistol already seems in much better spirits. The break seems to have done him a lot of good, and he stretches his limbs as he approaches the pod. The pool of liquids inside gleam, the unbroken surface practically shimmering in the light. But today, I have plenty of work to get done. And with that, he steps into the pod. The fluids well up around his feet, pulling up higher as he begins to lower his body, and I blurt out in a hurry. Yistol! Yeah? Good luck with your work. You can do it. I know you can. You're going to do an excellent job keeping the city safe, and I'll be back in the evening, right before the actual eclipse. Let's talk then. A heartbeat passes before Yistol nods. He smiles. Though it's seemingly his usual gentle smile, I can sense a flicker of something more in the way he looks at me. A sort of intimacy that wasn't there before, like we're sharing a secret. I guess we are, in a sense. I'm looking forward to it. Have fun out there, Phil, and stay safe. The pod closes up around him in an instant, and the two halves of the flesh shells coming together with a wet sound of suction. The numerous eyes on the pods roll once, as if trying to find their focus, open wide, then immediately go half-lidded. Yistol must have promptly directed all of his focus outside. I'm sure it's necessary. The city must be escalating with its activities as we grow ever nearer to the time of the eclipse. Everyone else is also deeply immersed in their work, and I walk past them as quietly as I can, careful not to step on any of the communication bladders. Nobody so much as glances at me as I step out towards the door. The creak of it pulling open sounds so loud to me, but to them, it doesn't exist. I'm glad such diligent people are keeping our city safe. I end up wandering the streets outside. I need to think about Yistol's proposition, of course, but I feel like I need to calm myself first before I address something so important. So I walk. It feels good to walk. My body is so accustomed to running my daily route that I've been feeling antsier than I realized, and simply taking to the streets at a brisk walk helps me clear my head. My feet carry me down familiar paths, and I let my eyes wander over various sights and sounds. This is all very, very familiar territory to me, but today, on the day of the eclipse, everything is different, just a little. Just enough to make me appreciate the city all the more. I walk past a small crowd. They've all gathered around one individual who stands tall, arms spread, speaking in a booming voice. Today is the day, my friends. In a few hours, the eclipse will happen. Good fortune will come to all of us. And so we depart now, off into the Bone Plains to hunt the great earth whale. The crowd erupts into cheers. Several arms are raised high, hands clasped tight around their spears. This must be a hunting party. Everyone looks so ecstatic, practically mad with excitement, and it's almost infectious. I find myself smiling as I walk by. They say the earth whale cannot be hunted, but we'll prove them wrong. Will be remembered for years, for decades to come, and everyone will feast on earth whale tonight. To victory! To victory! The triumphant shouting and hollering is audibly long after I turn the corner and off the street. The park is quieter. Not that it's totally free of the eclipse's influence. Of course, I pass by what looks like a couple embracing each other, whispering to each other and giggling. They seem very happy, and I give them a wide berth, trying to pass by quietly without interrupting anything. Elsewhere in the woods, I can hear boistering conversations and shouts, but all sounds are muffled by the ambience of the woods, and I look for an isolated spot where I can sit and think. It doesn't take terribly long for me to find a small grove of trees a short distance from the main path, flanking an old fallen log. The fingerpods on the ground squirm as I approach, no doubt alerted by the pad of my feet on the ground, but they settle once I take a seat. All around me, I hear the chittering of insects and distant calls of crows. The city's bustle comes from someplace even further away, an ever-present but now muted reminder of what's happening today. And sinking into a relaxing atmosphere, I close my eyes. Vil, would you please consider bonding with me tonight during the eclipse? It's hard to really imagine what this bonding would be like, but It hadn't sounded like anything as simple as being eaten. I've heard of individuals like that, of course, who need to be assimilated or absorb other people in order to survive or grow stronger. They often form bonds with those who had naturally short lifespans or who were fated to die shortly after procreating. These relationships often seem short, passionate, no doubt amplified by the fact that one party will only live on in the other's memories. What Yistol described, however, sounded completely different. The bonding process will bring us closer than ever. Our minds will be brought together as one. We will be able to share our thoughts, our feelings, our dreams with each other with absolute clarity. As an evolved being, we will always be at peace with each other. We, not I, huh? I won't vanish. I'll still be there. I'll be with Yistol. I will lose something. A lot, possibly. Things could change drastically. But at the same time, I will gain something. A lifelong partner and a trusted companion. And the city will benefit. Technically, it would be a small sacrifice for the sake of many. But still, would Yistol chastise me for hesitating over this decision? Would he be upset if I said no? I don't think so. I end up quietly talking to myself as I sift through my thoughts. Yistol isn't like that. That's why he gave me this time to think to myself. And while this request may have certainly caught me off guard, his honesty and sincerity had made it much easier to accept. With how passionate he'd seemed during that conversation, it was hard to imagine he wanted to bond with me purely for selfish reasons. From anyone else, I might have been more uneasy about being faced by this decision, but I feel like Yistol had wanted me to understand the full scope of the situation and had wanted me to think about it over on my own, so I wouldn't feel pressured. This is my decision to make. I think of various people in my life, my work, the things I enjoy doing, the places, sights, and sounds I've experienced. I think of how my relationship to those precious things might change if I decide to bond with Yistol. And I think of Yistol. I think of long days spent with him at his side, the two of us working together towards a common goal. I think of his calm smile, the gentle cadence of his voice, his calm and reassuring presence. I think of the times I've known him, of how much I've grown to respect him and enjoy his company. I think about how it might be to grow even closer to him, to work towards protecting the city together with him. Absorbed in my thoughts, I barely noticed the time going. In the rustle of the leaves that finally snaps me back to reality, and I sit up from where I ended up lying down on the log. The sudden movement is enough to set off the finger pots nearby, and they wriggle unhappily as I clamber to my feet. The rustling turns out to be a small child barging through the nearby bush. The child gives me a confused look, as if demanding to know why I'm here, and I smile in return. Past a dense wall of foliage, I can hear an adult calling for the child. Maybe they're too big to go through the bush. Going around all the trees could take them a while. Sorry, there isn't much to do here. Let's go back, okay? It sounds like somebody's looking for you. The child pouts at first, making a face, but reluctantly holds out a hand. I take the offered hand, tugging the child along gently as I go back through the foliage, the way the child had come. As we emerge through the bush, brushing leaves out of our eyes, the parent looks over with a start. Sorry to surprise you. I thought it would be best not to let your little one wander around the woods. It only takes a small tug at the child's head to get them to return to their parents' side, and I'm thanked profusely. The child is so excited for the eclipse, I'm told. They wanted to go exploring on this special day. Last time, they found an enormous cluster of bowflowers in the woods, but had never been able to find it again, and they were sure they'd find it again today. The eclipse really is a special day for everyone, isn't it? I give the parent and small child a small wave as I leave, wishing the child good luck but suggesting that maybe they explore together. The child, perhaps understandably, seems offended by this unwarranted advice given by a stranger, but the parent at least thanks me once more before seeing me off. It feels good being able to help people. It was a small gesture, one that cost me virtually nothing but was still helpful to someone, and that knowledge makes a warm feeling bloom in my chest. Thinking from this perspective, I can certainly see why Yistol values this job so much. It makes sense that he's devoted to helping the city as much as he can. Perhaps it really is a goal worth my sacrifice. I think back to how exhausted he'd seemed when he emerged from the pod, practically dizzy from the long time spent looking over the city, but at the same time, he'd seemed so proud and fun as he looked over the buildings from the rooftop, one hand touching against the spire's long vanes. I looked up at the rapidly darkening sky. In the far distance, I think I can make out the very tip of the spire, though it might just be my imagination confusing a wayward tree branch for the spire's top. Either way, I should probably head back. I think it's time. The streets are busier than ever as I make my way towards the Overlook office. Most people are clustered together in groups, the biggest one overseen by Overlook officers standing at ready in case there's any trouble. I hear talk of a romantic confession going well. Someone decides to travel out west into an unknown territory and is recruiting mates to travel with them. One person has decided today is the day they will begin the process of setting up their new business. The announcement is met with cheers. Overhead, the suns have drifted across the sky, seemingly on a collision course aimed at each other. The moon is a darker shape that crawls even closer, as if intent on devouring the suns. My skin almost feels tingly from the energy in the air, and I find myself jogging, then running towards the Overlook office. I want to see Yistol. I want to let him know of my decision. The Overlook office is even quieter than before when I enter. The lights are off and the desks are empty. The skies outside are rapidly darkening as the moon begins encroaching upon the sun's light, and the interior of the office feels almost desolate. It takes almost a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, and then I realize the pot in the corner, alone, is still occupied. His eyes are all closed. Yistol must be completely focused on the events happening outside. Unwilling to interrupt him, I walk over to the pot and sit beside it. It pulses gently, radiating an intense warmth, like Yistol itself. It's an incredibly comforting presence. Just being near it tends to put one at ease. Despite not having run my route today, I find myself starting to grow languid and sleepy. I guess even just walking around and thinking about things is much more exhausting than one might imagine. It does feel like it's been a very long day after all. And if it's been a long day for me, it must be exponentially more draining for Yistol. I hope he'll be able to take a break soon. Vil? I bolt upright at the sound of Yistol's voice. I hadn't meant to fall asleep after all. Yistol is crouched beside me, a hand still hovering over where he'd evidently been hesitating to shake at my shoulder. He laughs as I look at him, rubbing a hand on my face. You caught me by surprise. I didn't realize you'd come. Were you waiting long? No, not at all. It's just that the pot was really warm and I guess I dozed off. I'm still trying to rub the sleep out of my eyes, and Yistol smiles warmly. You should have gone home if you were so tired. It's been a busy day after all. Our work here is pretty much done. The eclipse will be soon, and the officers have been dispatched to all existing trouble sites, as well as standing by where we expect there might be even more trouble. Even the remaining workers here had small things they wanted to do before the eclipse happened, so I let them leave. So it took me a little longer to finish those last tasks. Sorry to keep you waiting. It's fine. You don't need to apologize. I'm finally feeling alert once more, and I sit up straighter to peer at Yistol's face. He still looks tired, but a little more at peace. With all the work done for this eclipse, he must be feeling tremendously relieved, not like earlier when he seemed so stressed. Besides, I couldn't leave. I needed to answer your question. Right. For a brief moment, I see a trace of nervousness return to Yistol's features. His eyes widen marginally before settling back with his calm gaze, his lips parting to reveal a sliver of teeth. They press together thinly as he nods. Of course. There's a subtle scrape of his exoskeleton on the floor as he moves to sit on the floor, facing me. The remaining light from outside filters through the window, highlighting his features from the side and glimmering off stray strands of his hair. His gaze feels more intense than ever as he looks at me, not demanding or prying, but waiting patiently for my answer. Despite my earlier signs of unease, his voice is quiet and calm as he stays. Vil, would you bond with me? His words have a beautiful clarity to them. They almost seem to echo in my chest, throbbing alongside my pulse. The calm cadence of his voice is betrayed by a focused way he regards me, as if I'm the only thing in this world at the moment. A warm flush of gratitude washes through my veins. Regardless of my answer, I'm incredibly grateful that he will ask such a thing of me, though I never aim for it, nor expect it to become someone so important to Yistol. I've always treasured our friendship, knowing that he feels the same way, and perhaps to a greater magnitude that I can truly comprehend, is truly dizzying. And feeling a heady rush of blood pour through me, I know there's only one way I can answer. I try to keep my voice as calm and clear as Yistol had been given as I give my answer. I will. I'm almost startled by the words that leave my mouth. They pour out before I can stop myself, but as I comprehend what I'm saying, I also understand that this is the right choice. The words come faster, spilling forth my true feelings. I want to bond with you, Yistol. I want to be together with you and help you. I see. Yistol blinks. Is he shocked? He blinks again, before he seems to understand what I said, and repeats. I see! You'll do it! It catches me completely by surprise when he suddenly wraps his arms around me and pulls me close. Very close. Closer than we've ever been. His body feels warmer than it looks, when his exoskeleton presses against my chest. Yistol's head bows, almost touching my shoulders, and I can feel a deep exhale whispering against my throat. It's a little shaky. Thank you so much, Bill. I can't put into words how much this means to me. His fingers tug into my robe, and he pulls me even tighter. I'm pretty sure I've never seen him with this much emotion. Nothing even close, and it truly drives home how important this is to him. I gently rub a hand at Yistol's back, or as much of his back I can reach. My palm ends up awkwardly touching somewhere between his side and his shoulder blade, feeling the smooth expanse of his exoskeleton. You don't need to thank me for anything, Yistol. I was really glad that you asked me. I know it's an incredibly important decision for you, and if you feel safe asking it of me, then I'm really honored. Even with the way he pulls me close, I can feel even closer if I close my eyes. I can feel his breath against my skin, the wiry strands of his hair brushing against my cheek, the way his grasp pulls my cloak taut around me. I feel enveloped in his presence. It's very comforting. We've known each other for a while now, haven't we? We have. And I've always felt really comfortable around you. I've always thought it's a good thing that you're the Overlook, because I know the city will always be in safe hands with you around. So if I can help you and be with you, then I'm really glad. There's no one I'd rather do something like that with. Yistol doesn't respond, but his head nudges against my shoulder, almost like he's nuzzling me. But he stays like that for a moment before finally pulling back a bit. One arm pulls away from around my shoulder to touch on my face, gently brushing some of my hair out of my face. You don't know how happy it makes me hearing you say that. He leans back in, this time to touch foreheads with me. Stray strands of his hair slide against me with each gentle metallic noises as he leans back once more. Wait, are you gonna vore me right in your office? I can't wait to bond with you. The smile on his face is as gentle as ever, but there's a closeness and warmth to it that feels different. It feels like he's truly addressing me as Yistol, an individual rather than as the Overlook to the city. I beam back at him. His gratitude and joy are infectious, and there's a hot feeling fluttering in my stomach. I'm excited too. There's more I want to say. It feels like a dam has broken, and there's an endless number of things I want to say. But before even either of us can speak, a loud murmur from outside catches our attention. It's only when we look up from each other that we realize that the skies outside had suddenly grown much darker, and they only continue to fade. The eclipse! Must be close! Bill, come on. There's a light tap-tap of his feet against the floor as Yistol gracefully gets to his feet, holding out a hand to me. When I take it, he pulls me up in one go. Let's go watch it. But shouldn't we bond first? Yistol laughs. It's a very light and joyful sound. He continues to pull me along without hesitation, headed towards the door that leads to the outside stairwell. Bonding takes a while, and I know the superstition dictates it's best to make our important decisions before the eclipse actually happens, but we already made our decision, didn't we? Technically speaking. And this will be our first time seeing an eclipse since we got to know each other. So I want a good view, something I'll remember forever. I guess I can't argue with that. With that said, I pick up the pace. All the weariness I felt earlier seems to have melted away at some point. I feel as long as Yistol is pulling me along, we could go anywhere and I wouldn't feel tired. Of course, we didn't go far at all. We only hurry up the stairwell, up onto the roof. The streets all around the Overlook office are cluttered with people. Some are overseen by Overlook officers. The rooftop nearby are also dotted with people looking to get a good view. Others peer out their windows or climb the numerous light poles. The electric energy in the air is practically palpable. Yistol and I stand near the spire, where the numerous eyeballs languidly sweep across the horizon. Is it also aware of what's about to happen, I wonder? And as if responding to my question, one of the eyeballs swivels straight upwards. Oh, wow. The sun seems so much brighter as they start to converge. Even with the dusting of clouds marring the skies, the light feels warmer than usual. Perhaps it's the proximity between them that amplifies their light. Perhaps it's a trick of the eye, because we're not used to seeing them traveling such a direct collision course. Perhaps it's just our excitement that heightens every emotion in the moment. Regardless, we watch the three suns creep closer and closer. I find myself holding my breath without even realizing it. It is a cry from below that has me exhaling sharply. Someone on the ground screams in what seems like euphoric pleasure. Another person joins in soon afterwards, but most of us are quiet. Ooh, especially when the moon begins to cut through the sun's warm light. I feel ripples travel through the crowd, through the very atmosphere when the moon's shadow first bites into the sun's glow, seemingly uncaring of the effect it's having. The moon marches slowly onward, on the direct path to devour the entirety of the sun's glow. Yistol stands perfectly straight and tall beside me, gaze directed upwards. But his hand reaches out, as if searching for something. My hand. Oh, wow. As soon as I take his hand, his fingers squeeze tight around mine. It's happening! His voice is only a quiet murmur, but it still feels terribly loud. The only sound I can hear now are muffled whispers and murmurs. The very air feels oppressive and heavy, like it's weighing down upon our throats, and speaking at the moment feels taboo. So I only nod, squeezing tight at Yistol's hand. We don't look at each other, but we're at least very aware of each other's presence as he continues to gaze upwards. The warm glow of light above us is at first a half circle, then a crescent, then only a slightest slimmer. The warm glow of light above us is at first a half circle, then a crescent, then only a slimmest sliver. And then there's only the ominous ring floating above us, a perfect, delicate circle of sunlight that majestically adorns the dark skies, like an eye watching over us. The air feels heavy in my lungs, my chest feels tight, the eclipse bears down on us, an overwhelming presence greater than any of us will ever equal, and it makes my skin prickle. It feels physically impossible to tear my eyes away from the skies, even as the tiniest pinpricks of light begins to pierce past the moon's shadow. But a gentle tug of my hand pulls me away one step, then another. The sun has finally begun to fight their way out of the moon's shadow when I finally manage to look away. Come on. Yistol still speaks at a whisper though. He glances back briefly to give me a smile as he continues to lead the way. We go back down the stairwell, of course, through the doors that lead into the office. The streets below seem to have broken free of the eclipse's allure by now. I start to hear murmurs and shouts drifting up towards us as people rejoice in what they had the chance to witness. An overjoyed scream is the last thing I hear clearly before I shut the office door. The office is instantly quieter, the noise from the streets seeming to come from a million miles away. There's just the sound of our footsteps as we walked across the office and towards the pod. Is it okay for me to come in? Yistol had stepped into the pod without any hesitation, but I can't help hesitating. The pod is the Overlook's domain, after all. I'm not sure if the pod can even hold the both of us. But Yistol just laughs, gentle but not mocking. He keeps a steady grip on my hand as he ushers me to step in beside him. Of course, anyone that I acknowledge is allowed to enter the pod, and besides, it will have to learn to recognize this once we're bonded. So doing the bonding process within the pod is a useful method. My predecessor highly recommended I'm actually gonna get Vored inside the pod. What in the world? I see. Even with the encouragement, entering the pod is a strange feeling. The fluid inside is lukewarm and thick, but the surface parts easily. As I begin to dip my foot in, my legs glide in with practically no resistance, and when I stand with both feet in the pod, the fluids close up around the circumference of my limbs. Here, come closer. Yistol's bony arms rest over my shoulder, easing me closer. Fluid sloshes around our calves, lapping at the open edges of the pod, but never spilling over. Should I take off my things? Yes, if you don't mind. A small nod as I begin undoing the fastenings of my cloak, letting it drop to the floor. And as soon as I'm bare, Yistol suddenly wraps his arms around me, pulling me into a tight embrace. When it drops his weight down, I'm brought down along with him, and together we sink into the welcoming pool of liquid. Oh my god! The roof of the pod snaps shut with a loud squelch, sprinkling us with flecks of fluid, but the interior of the pot is still somehow lit with a warm glow. Submerged in the pool of liquids, I worry for a moment how I'm meant to breathe, but I'm given my answer soon enough when I feel the fluids begin to subside, as if they're being sucked back into the pod. My head breaks through the surface, and I gasp. Inside the pod, the air tastes warm, with a deep sweetness to it, not like sugar, but like meat. I'm still inhaling deeply, trying to grow used to the sensation, when Yistol's hand also breaches the surface. The level of fluids continues to shrink down, sinking below our shoulders. Don't worry, the pod will adjust to us. It'll make sure we're comfortable. As if to prove his point, he sits back, tugging me along as I'm seated in his lap. The fluid slosh around him, and the plush walls of flesh behind him conforms to the shape of his back. Sitting this close to him, I can feel his exoskeleton start to grow warmer. Not just his exoskeleton, but the very air feels hotter and wetter and sweeter. It feels like I'll melt away if I stay in here too long, like I'll become part of the pod. It's making my body feel oddly sensitive, and I shiver as Yistol's hand traces along my side, then rests against my back. His fingertips are two hot points of contact against my skin that demands a great deal of my attention. But far more pressing is when he brings his face close to mine. Ah, Vil. His voice echoes in the tight space, sending the tiniest ripples running across the surface of the fluid pool. The level of fluid had sunk further down, lapping across our sides, warm and comforting without being imposed. Yistol was certainly right in saying that the pot would make me comfortable. I feel utterly at home here, in Yistol's warm embrace, feeling his breath brushing over my shoulder. I close my eyes, meaning to not, but feeling too pleasantly absent to do so. Yistol seems to get my meaning, regardless, because he leans in closer. His words are spoken in a low whisper, each syllable melting into my thoughts when he asks, "Can we begin?" Almost before the question drops, I know my answer. Yes. Oh my god, I'm about to be bored. I hear the slick sound of something wet against something hard, like blood sluicing off bone. And I very quickly realize it's the sound of Yistol's mandibles spreading wide open. For a moment, I catch a glimpse of gleaming white teeth at the periphery of my vision. Then they sink into my shoulder. Like the way my feet had eased into the pot's fluids without any resistance, Yistol's teeth slide into my flesh smoothly, with no pause or hesitation, so swiftly that I barely feel the initial puncture. Only when they lodge deep in my flesh, I feel a prickle of pain sparking through my nerves. Even then, it feels hot and airy. I feel so hot right now. It's not unpleasant at all. My flesh parts easily, as if the pot's fluid have melted away any resistance, partially liquefying it. Then I can feel the trickle of hot fluid from the bite mark trace down my chest, pattering into the pool around us. It leaves behind a trace of flickering warmth that lingers on my skin. I want to feel more of that warmth. My hands wander, practically on their own, starting from Yistol's side and travel upward. My fingertips touch against Yistol's body, feeling out details as I'd seen before, but had never thought I'd get to touch. The gentle inward curve of his exoskeleton above his hips, the softer connective portion where his arms meet his shoulder, the partition line near his throat. Just below his throat, his exoskeleton opens up a window, where his inner flesh peeks past. It's shiny in the warm, hot air of the pod, and I touch at the edge of it as gently as possible. It still earns a deep shiver, and Yistol's mandibles snap shut quickly enough that his teeth rake thin lines across my throat, and the sensation sends a heady rush of blood through my veins, and I exhale sharply. My voice escapes with a hot lungful of air. It's a soft noise, but a needy one that echoes in the tight confines of the pod. Yistol says nothing, responding in a low purr from the back of his throat. It makes his teeth vibrate ever so slightly as he takes small bites into the junction of my throat and my shoulder. Oh my god! Everything is starting to melt together. The sounds of fluid lapping around us, the feel of teeth easing into my arms, the pressure of Yistol's hands dragging down my back and around below my ribcage. Everything is starting to melt together. The sounds of fluids lapping around us, the feel of teeth easing into my arms, the pressure of Yistol's hands dragging down my back and below my ribcage. His fingers squeeze tighter, pressing against, then into my sides. My body gives easily to his very touch, made pliable and sensitive and eager by the sweet air and the lapse of fluid. It doesn't take much encouragement from him for me to raise myself up on my knees. It lets me leaning closer to him, pressing chest against chest. The tiny window of his inner flesh feels incredibly hot against my chest, enough to earn a low groan. I want to be closer to him, closer than anything else. So close we become one. I want to be bonded to him. And my body responds easily to these desires, slowly succumbing to Yistol's every touch. As if guided by magnetism, he finds the spot where my body is most prepared to take him. Teeth glides into my throat with the ease of a knife through water, his hands dragging hot lines of sensation across my skin and making a heavy sensation settle in my gut. He shifts beneath me, then pulls me closer until there's practically no boundary between us. My hands grip tight around Yistol's shoulder, pulling him closer. I immediately feel like our bodies have become one, like a ribcage without spine. My bodies would collapse in on itself without Yistol's form to hold me together. His exoskeleton is hot and slick to touch, The pot's fluids have soaked through his hair, and the strands practically welcome to the tangle of my fingers through them, just like my body continues to welcome each and every breach. Faintly, I hear Yistol murmuring my name. His eyes are closed, his movements gentle, and he nuzzles against my ribcage. His teeth gently ease apart my skin, and I shiver as his teeth scrape across bone. I can't feel my legs anymore, like they're not there anymore, replaced by a warm sludge. That hot, heavy feeling in my gut keeps expanding, spanking hardest when I move to pull him closer to me. Through the haze of light and sparks that are starting to color my vision, I feel my fingertips starting to melt, smearing against Yistol's shoulders. It's good, because I can sink even deeper in Yistol's lap this way, feeling him sink deeper, deeper, deeper into my innermost recesses. My heart's almost beating out of my chest, and I gasp when Yistol murmurs my name right against it. I say his name back, but I'm not sure if my voice can leave my throat anymore. It's starting to become a bit too much for me. The heat's continuing to rise, but not in an unpleasant fashion. It's not like the sweltering heat of summer, or the stifle of a hot blanket. This is the heat of a warm embrace that one sinks into endlessly without escape. When I close my eyes, I can feel every little movement against me. The drag of Yistol's hand up my back, and the way it presses his arms against my spine, and the way each hot breath flits against my bone and through my ribcage. The bob of his throat when he swallows, and the faint vibrations whenever he murmurs my name. The hot trickle of the pot's fluid is everywhere now, covering me like a silk cobweb. I've never felt more comfortable. I know for sure that I made the correct choice in bonding with Yistol. How else would I ever feel so at peace? When I close my eyes, I can hear a single heartbeat pulsing between us. Yistol is still calling my name, and I smile. I'm very glad it's the last thing I hear as my thoughts grow fuzzy and dark. It's a full day before I awaken. I'm aware of it immediately. There's no transition, no period where I'm hazily emerging from sleep. Just the overwhelming darkness of sleep, followed by instantaneous clarity. Because Yistol was awake first, and as soon as I'm awake, we share everything we know. We are one and the same, so I immediately understand that the bonding process was a success, and that he'd awakened first, but had been reluctant to awaken me because he was sure I was exhausted, and he also immediately understood that I was grateful for his consideration. Even bonded with me, he is kind and considerate, and I'm immensely glad for it. Oh my god, I look so cool! It takes no time at all to adjust to being bonded. Yistol had been worried the change would be too drastic. Perhaps I simply adapted quickly. I do find it strange at first, occupying a form so different from mine. Our evolved bodies is closer to Yistol's old form than mine, and at first, I'm confused by the willowy fingers and delicate limbs. They're so unlike my own robust limbs, partly from long days spent running. At the same time, it's nice getting to know all the intimate details of Yistol's body for the first time. Nobody will ever know him better than I do, and nobody will ever know me better than he does, now that we're bonded. He's also immediately understands what my body had been like and commiserates with my difficulties. Then he helps me adjust until I'm comfortable once more. It's a shock to people who knew me before, of course. Our relationship do change drastically in a way that can't be reversed. As the Overlook, I can't help but maintain the position I did before, delivering salt. But it's not a bad change either, just different. I can still speak to them, ask how they're doing, inquire about their daily lives. I still cherish each and every one of them, the same as before, perhaps even more now that we want to protect the city together. As the Overlook, we think so dearly of the city and do everything we can to nourish it. The city responds in kind by flourishing more than ever. What makes us happiest is neither the bustling city, nor the peaceful streets, nor the friendliness of the other people. However, we adore most things, of course. We're deeply grateful for them. But what puts us at peace is the knowledge that we have each other. Yistol is with me, I am with him. We are always aware of each other, together but separate, at complete peace with each other. And at the same time, we stand on the rooftop of the office and look out over the city. Remember the night of the eclipse, the night that brought us together. The eclipse was only the first of many to come, but it will always be the most meaningful to us. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. We will be coming back with both Britain's and Nyar's route, which I am so excited about. And if you guys want to play this for yourself, link to the game is in the description below. I will not tell you about a secret setting that's available in the preferences if you guys so decide to take a look at that. Well, I'm pretty sure you guys will have fun with that either way. Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely rest of the day, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. This is Lionel, signing off. Ciao.